the TFNB Your Bank for Life studio. Now, it's time for the SMOAK Show. Presented by IdealMRI.com. Premium quality MRIs, convenient, affordable. That's ideal. And by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance. We are Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, your insurance provider built by Texans for Texans. And we've been protecting families in our great state since 1952. TFNB, your bank for life, serving Central Texans since 1889. It's time for the SMOAK Show on 365 Sports with David SMOAK and Craig SMOAK.
Mike Hamilton put together. We appreciate that. Thank you for your time. The SMOAK Show on 365 Sports. David SMOAK and Craig SMOAK, Rez, Garrett, Andrew, all a part of what we do today. Craig, let's get straight to the facts on Brendan Sorsby. Not really much has changed since the report yesterday that he had checked into a center and is trying to figure himself out and get through what's going on with the gambling accusations, investigation, and more. So this affects everything. And we kind of touched on that during the show yesterday. We'll have Justin Williams, who wrote a long article about it from theathletic.com at 3:30, Shahan Jararaja at 4, and more. This affects not only Texas Tech, who's one of the favorites, if not the favorite to win the Big 12. It affects Texas Tech possibility if they're a game or two out, a game or two that they would not lose otherwise. It affects their college football playoff chances. And, of course, that also affects the Big 12. Somebody else would have to step up. And thirdly, he was going to be a part of the discussion, and especially if Tech kept winning when it came to the Heisman Trophy. Forget about the draft of the year, all that will be handled later, and who knows, we'll ask John McClain today about a supplemental draft. But this has consequences across the board, and we'll have more news and notes on it here in just a second.
Yeah, well, what's up, first of all, to the chat and to everybody out there watching. Good to be with you. Good to be able to breathe today when I talk to you and not be as out of sorts as I was yesterday, coming off of a sickness. Still kind of battling that a little bit, but do you have much allergies? Like
I tell you what, Craig, it's a great question. When I, as you know, we were in Tyler for a long, long time, all those pine trees, billions of them, and I had them. And I never had to do like an allergy shot like some, but I would have to every once in a while go get a steroid shot about 3 times a year. The one time of the year when it got me was when heat in August to September turned into cool nights, and I was broadcasting, and that's what it affected me.
Yeah, well, I say that, and I got plenty to say about Brendan Sorsby, but, man, I was in a bad way yesterday. I went home and I slept for like 10 hours straight.
I worried about you so much I sent you an email about midnight.
Yeah, I mean, I yesterday felt like a fever dream. It really did. It felt like a fever dream. I think it's the combination of the allergies are just the pollen and everything's just so crazy right now. And then we also have a young member of the family who I think is a vessel for people kissing on her and the little baby. I think maybe some of that as well. But I'm glad to be here and glad to be feeing a lot better than I was yesterday. That's what I'm trying to get.
So
at.
You're talking about
Baby Gracie, my niece-in-law, or my niece, who is the most adorable thing, but I think she is like a little germ tray sometimes, and so I think that might be playing into it as well. But I'm glad to be able to breathe and to be able to discuss and hopefully not cough too much. But I hope everybody's doing well out there. And yeah, the Brendan Sorsby story yesterday, just dropping out of seemingly nowhere, was a game changer, and it remains to be seen how much of the game is going to change. You brought up a lot of things. I think some of the stuff like Sorsby being a Heisman contender is putting the cart before the horse, but that's certainly what the goal was, and certainly what the idea is if you are Texas Tech bringing him in is not only is he going to make you better as a team, but he's going to maybe be a guy that can go win some individual awards and be a high draft pick and Maxwell type guy and all those things as well. So everything was on the table for Texas Tech, was getting Brendan Sorsby, winning the Big 12, going back to the playoff. They were pretty clear favorites, are pretty clear favorites. I have not checked the Vegas odds and how much those have changed. And I don't know how much they can, because even if you assume that precedent's been set and he's going to be suspended for the year, until that happens, we really don't know. Like, did he make a difference by checking himself into rehab? Is he going to get like some sympathy? I doubt it. I really doubt it, because I think that would be a bad precedent to set for the NCAA. But yeah, we don't know yet what's going to happen. Although just going off what's happened before, yeah, they're likely losing him. And so that was multi-million-dollar investment. That was a jewel of your transfer class. That was a guy who was the big, well, what's so different from last year is like, oh, well, we went out and got this really high-level quarterback, all due respect to Baron Morton. And now that's just all up in the air. It's all entirely up in the air, and there's just questions galore. I mean, I was thinking about doing a podcast later. We'll see. But, like, who knew and when? Who dropped this information to begin with? Like, how did this eventually start to matriculate? I think we're starting to learn some of those answers. Does he really need help? I mean, I think everybody's got a valid question if they're wondering, like, is this for show, or are you really going in there to better yourself? And I hope it's the latter. And then what does the NCAA do is obviously the question everybody really wants to know. And subsequently, when we get that decision, what does that mean for Texas Tech? So those are all questions that did not exist yesterday that now exist today because of the news that dropped. And I think in one of the articles I was reading earlier, this could be a very quick process. I mean, it's going to have to be in so many ways. You can't drag this out for like 6 or 7 months. But I don't know how quick. I am heavily invested, heavily interested. And I just hate that, as juicy of a story as it is to talk about, that Tech's in this position, because I was very excited about the pickup and very adamant about how much I think that, plus what else they did and what they had coming back, put them as the clear favorite in the Big 12. Could they still be the clear favorite if Hammond coming off an ACL and some of the other backs or some of the other quarterbacks back there play well enough? Like, yeah, they can still be a really good team, but I do think taking Sorsby out of the equation, even though I've seen plenty of people who weren't sold on him and felt he was a little bit overrated or not so sure that he's like that elite, I think it's a situation where you go from, man, I don't see anything outside of like a surprise loss like ASU last year on this schedule, to, man, now I think they probably drop a second game somewhere along the way. Like, that's what it did to me, at least. I haven't decided which game that is, but yeah, it's got me thinking that they probably lose at least one more game if he's not able to play this year.
Yeah, and I was on with Pat Smith and Landrum. They are on the 3-man front down in Birmingham, and they were asking me a lot about that. And, like, when did we know? Yesterday. Did others know before that? That's something we're going to chew on here in just a moment. Does that mean anything or not? There's some conspiracy theories and all of that. I just went online, unless I'm going to the wrong place, because I'm not somebody that gets on and gambles. Not that I wouldn't, like, sometimes think about it. Like, all 16 teams minus Tech are on betonline.ag for wins plus or minus, over plus or minus wins, but I do not see Texas Tech. 15 of the 16 teams are listed, but not Tech.
Yeah, I don't know how all that works. So I'll defer to people in chat or on Twitter that can explain what that might mean. I had not gone and looked myself. It's just something as we're talking here that I thought about, like, oh, I wonder if the odds have actually even shifted since yesterday. I would imagine that they might have. So, yeah, somebody out there who knows better and knows what all that stuff means, please feel free to pass that along. But it definitely changes my opinion on things. I mean, I didn't think that they were, to be clear, some like 8-win team and they get him and now they're going to go undefeated. I think they were already a team that you're like 10-2 at worst with just good quarterback play. And then you add him in there, and I think he is one of the better quarterbacks in the league and maybe in the country next year. But now, like, yeah, all bets are off. Well, for lack of a better term, excuse me, here come the allergies. For lack of a better term, all bets are off. So, yeah, there's just a lot of questions about how this all came to be, and a lot of questions about what is going to happen now moving forward. Although I think most people are already of the mind that this is not going to work out well for Brennan Sorsby, and therefore probably not work out well for Tech in the long run.
Yeah, so, again, the odds, I'm looking at a couple of different places, but in one of them, 15 of the 16 teams listed on the over-under when it comes to wins. So here's the deal. I do see this a lot. First of all, Brendan Sorsby, whatever he did it. Taking responsibility, checking into a counseling, rehab, whatever that is, treatment center. And he did it on the day that the story popped. And that doesn't mean he wasn't thinking about it. It doesn't mean he did it because of the story popping, but it's all kind of tied in together. But I cannot imagine how he's going to play. Just because of the precedent we've seen with Hunter Deckers, But I did have this, and I was going to ask you this question. John Mateer got caught up in a little bit of a nick with his gambling, but he played like throughout the entire year for Oklahoma. And you could help me in the chat room. I thought about that today on the way to the studio. It was like online, maybe an app or whatever.
No, it was freaking, it was like the Cash app. It showed his transactions, and he had a description of one of his transactions that said something about a game that he may have bet on, but I don't think that was anything you could actually prove. So yeah, the Venmo is what it was. That's what I was trying to think of the word. He was doing the app. Venmo payments, and he put like sports gambling as a title on it, and then he put like the name of, it was like UCLA versus somebody as the title of one of them, and that was what was out there. But I don't know beyond that, because that went from being a really big story to kind of petering out pretty quickly. And I don't recall really whether that was because there wasn't much that you could prove, or if it was just him being goofy and that's plausible deniability, or what there. I need to probably look into that. But yeah, I know that's where a lot of people's heads went, was to John Mateer and what occurred last year. But here's the deal. There's way more facts in play with this story. Like, there's not a doubt that Brendan Sorsby was betting on stuff. Like, there's not a question of that. It's absolutely known, to the tune of thousands of bets. So, well, how can you make thousands? Well, if you do 3 a day for 1 year, that's over 1,000.
That's over 1,000, yeah.
So you've been doing this since at least 2022 that we know of, when you were at Indiana. So 1 a day since then, that's well over 1,000. But I think the big difference is that Sorsby's are like proven, and you can tell, whereas John Mateer's was like some rando, I don't know, fan of maybe Texas or like somebody from somewhere else that came across that.
It was a UCLA, Utah, or not. It doesn't matter. He put it up. There were a couple of images, the screenshots, but at the same time, I just brought that up because I don't remember much happening. And initially, like, oh my God. And then eventually it pretty much disappeared.
Yeah, actually, Mateer claimed they were inside jokes. I just pulled up an old article. Mateer, UCLA versus USC was one of the titles for a memo. Sports gambling was another one. Now, do I think that they were probably bets? Probably. I don't think they were just like, I'm going to randomly joke about UCLA versus USC. Well, why? So, I mean, were those probably bets of some sort? I would think there's a good chance of that. They also were in 2022 when all this got started for Sorsby. But, yeah, he claimed they were inside jokes, and I think that's where it kind of petered out, because I don't think you could prove otherwise. Whereas with Sorsby, again, there's no questioning that he bet. There's no question that he did that. Him checking himself into a treatment center just further reiterates that he's got an issue to take care of. But yeah, that's the big difference here. Whereas with Mateer, I don't know that there was any substantial proof or even how much it was really looked into. But the only question here is just really the outcome. But I know that there's a lot of mini questions that are maybe not necessarily of interest, but if you're really into this story, you can go down some avenues here of like, what did Cincinnati know? And
we're going to do that. Well, we're going to do that based on stories that were written either yesterday or even some of them today. But here's from Ross Dellinger from Yahoo Sports on not only what's next for Brendan Sorsby, but a couple of quotes or a couple of pieces of the article. Some bets made by Texas Tech quarterback Brendan Sorsby were less than $1. Most of them not more than 3 figures, which means like $1,000. But thousands of tiny wagers Sorsby placed over 4 years, a total value of less than 7 figures, but not insignificant, has placed his future as well as Texas Tech's 26th season in doubt.
Yeah, I think he was clearly doing some of those microtransactions like balls and strikes. I know that was mentioned in one of the articles about him being at Reds games, I think it was, and him putting some of those types of wagers. So, yeah, I mean, you could – I don't know what the limitations are, but you do that and you do it on a daily basis. If you just are into the swing of things like that, yeah, it's way easier than it sounds to do thousands of bets and not that far of a stretch, really. And to be not quite $1 million, but approaching it. Like, I wonder for him, what does the contract say with Texas Tech and how much, like he mentioned financial strain in his statement as far as checking into a treatment facility. And so I'm sure we'll come to know more of those details, but there's even that layer of it. Is like, dude, I know you're making really good money, but how much did you like spend on like nearly $1 million, or like, what are we talking about here? So yeah, at first when you see thousands for, I think, older people that didn't necessarily get into the big boon of betting here in the last decade plus, that might sound like it's impossible, but not really. When you got a phone in your hand, you can just do balls and strikes over the course of an entire baseball game. There's dozens of transactions right there, much less if you're doing it nearly every day. That adds up pretty quick.
Yeah, there's some of you in the chat also discussing it. We'll read those if we can, and I hope we can. Our first guest is Justin Williams at 3:30. He's part of that article, lengthy article in theathletic.com. So that's the part with Ross Dellinger. Also in Yahoo Sports, less than 2 weeks ago, reporting that NCAA contacted Texas Tech about the investigation with troves of transactions that Sorsby's online betting history. Treatment began after the NCAA revealed its findings, but at least two people contend that Sorsby did not place any bets since he's been on the campus at Texas Tech.
Well, that's good. I know he was at some basketball games, and they were promoting him on social media when he first arrived. So that's good to hear that. I don't know that it really changes anything, but it certainly doesn't hurt him even further, because if he was already casting bets on Texas Tech, then yeah, I think we're dealing with the guy who's got a bit of an issue most likely, and does regardless to some degree. But yeah, from the Texas Tech thing, I mean, I would just have to be an invisible person in the room, or be able to just get like that camera that angle to just see how that unfolded in real time. And in reality, I can only imagine just the shock and the jaws hitting the floor of like, what? And then scrambling to figure out what all this means, as they've been doing for the last 24 hours or so. But yeah, I mean, it's good. He wasn't betting on campus at Tech. He's only been there a couple months, or maybe a bit longer than that at this point, 3-4 months. So yeah, that's something, I guess.
All right. Also from Matt Hayes, who we had on just 2 or 3 weeks ago from USA Today, the Cincinnati Athletic Department, in his column, Cincinnati alerted of Brendan Sorsby gambling issue before the 2025 season. Reading from his article, they were informed prior to the start of the 2025 season. Two people with direct knowledge of the situation told USA Today Sports on Monday, by knowing Sorsby was gambling and playing him anyway, Cincinnati, of course, could face scrutiny if that's true from the NCAA. The penalty for wagers exceeding $200 is partial eligibility loss. Higher wagers, receiving more severe punishment. Players whose wagers do not exceed $200 receive rules and prevention education. Sorsby appeared, of course, played at Cincinnati throughout the 2025 season. Also,
well, I mean,
Ross Dellinger, go ahead.
That's notable. I mean, if Cincinnati knew about this.
If they did, yeah, because that's everyone's pointing the finger. Like yesterday, they had a lawsuit that his attorneys, they don't want to pay the $1 million. So all of a sudden, then this pops. We don't know that. It's part of as much message board or social media speculation as possibly may be true, but we don't know that right now.
Well, here's what Cincinnati did regardless. They knew about it as last year was getting underway, and they still played him for the entire season. That's for sure. That's factual. They learned last August, and they said, we're playing him anyways. And so I don't know what that means for Cincinnati. Certainly when you have the conversation that was going on yesterday of a lot of people accusing them of being the ones that dropped the dime on Brendan Sorsby out of jealousy or anger or just being bitter exes or whatever. I don't know if they would have done that, because it puts them in trouble now, potentially. So like, yeah, why would you go rat on, oh, well, we know he was doing this. It's like, so you knew about it? Like that would not have been smart. So yeah, they're implicated to some degree, and they'll have to go through the process of, I guess, explaining what they knew and when they knew and all those things. But yeah, this pretty clearly states from USA Today, Cincinnati AD officials or athletic department officials were alerted as early as August 25 that Sorsby had been engaging in gambling activity prior to the start of the season. The report, this is from CBS, states that the Big 12 utilizes a compliance monitoring app called Prohibit, which flags attempts by student athletes to access betting platforms or place prohibited wagers. And so despite that alert, as it says, Sorsby went on to play 12 games for Cincinnati. So I don't know that Cincinnati is the one that went and dimed him out, because now they're implicated, given that they knew at least as of August of last year and then played him for an entire season. So that could have an effect on them. And that's something that we didn't know yesterday, but that now puts Cincinnati into the light a little bit, and they're going to have to account for that to some degree.
And as somebody mentioned, we're a retired stockbroker, on when I mentioned 15 of the 16 Big 12 teams on the over-under with wins, Tech's not listed. It's like a quarterback injury or something like that.
Okay,
they take the bet off the table. Ross Dellinger, a $3 bet for an over to hit a college football game. A 50-cent bet for a ball on the next pitch of a Major League Baseball game. Those were some of the bets Brendan Sorsby made, some less than $1, most of them not, again, more than 3 figures. But thousands of tiny wagers that he placed over 4 years. And as we mentioned, not sure about the overall total, but his season is in doubt.
Well, I mean, he had some bets on UFC apparently, and that doesn't matter. He can actually bet on UFC or boxing or whatever. They're not NCAA certified sports, which I think I knew that, but this just hammered it home for me. I guess I probably didn't look too much into that, but now I'm fully aware of that being the case, where, yeah, go bet on UFC. There's no NCAA UFC program, so that's not a big deal. But when you're betting on some of the other sports that are involved, yeah, that gets you into trouble. And I think, again, you just do these little nickel and dime bets, and that can add up pretty quickly. And so thousands is, yeah, you could easily see him doing that over the course of 4 or 5 years if you're doing like 20 of them at a Reds game on a random night, and then turning around and doing NBA bets or whatever the next night, and so on and so forth. It sounds like it was just part of his routine where he did it a lot all the time. And sure enough, that's now out in the light, and he's reckoning with that. And I know there's a lot of people who push back, especially because there's so many people his age, I feel like, and there's so many people, age or not, that are heavily invested in the gambling side of things, that want to try to downplay it or try to, oh man, come on, he's just betting on this or that. It's like, yeah, man, but you gotta have some rules in place. You gotta have some ability to make sure that people feel like the integrity of the game is not being messed with. And so, yeah, you got to take these things very seriously. Even if there's some people that don't think gambling's all that serious, there's a lot of other people that could tell you differently, that are warning stories, that are people whose lives were ruined. And some people, like any vice, are better about controlling it than others. Brendan Sorsby's probably somewhere in the middle at this point. But yeah, luckily it wasn't anything more than it is. But certainly I hope he gets the help he needs, if in fact he does need help.
Just to clarify, because I had a couple of you ask, and even a couple of text messages, Texas Tech can't just go grab a quarterback because of the spring transfer portal. There are ways, in fact, that's what they call the ghost transfer, that would lead to suspensions of Joey McGuire and also much more. There is a possibility when you get to the early summer, but the spring transfer portal, had it been last year, they could go get somebody else. Like, not even blink, go find somebody else. Not that they don't love what Will Hammond brings to the table, but the concern, of course, is when. And like, for example, is it going to be October, as Joey McGuire has said? They weren't going to push that. And then you had this, and he might have known. I don't know when we know. We don't know when Tech knew. But they still have a depth chart and perhaps a manageable schedule early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with going and grabbing another quarterback is just how much of a gamble do you want to take? I mean, you can go and do it. You can go grab somebody, but you're going to have, as Pete Nakos, I think, was the one that put it out, Joey McGuire can't coach for half the season. And you may say, well, he's not really a coach anyway. Like, I'm sure there's somebody out there that feels like, well, he's more of a culture guy than he is an X's and O's guy. We could actually make that work. I'm sure there's a Texas Tech fan you could find that feels like that risk would be worth it. I don't think they're in the majority, but I think you could probably find that person. And then a fine equivalent to 20% of the program's annual budget. So let's say Tech's spending $20 million. We know they're spending way more than that. But let's say it's $20 million. Okay, $5 million fine. Cody Campbell can cut that check. So, I mean, you can talk yourself into how they could do that. I don't know that Joey Maguire wants to fall on the sword and have to miss half of his team's game as head coach just so the quarterback from fill in the blank can come save the day. I don't think Joey Maguire would do that trade-off, nor would I blame him. So, yeah, there's actually a way that you can do that, but it is at the cost of your coach not coaching for half the season and then paying a pretty significant in the millions amount of money. Now, again, Cody Campbell can cut that check. And I'm sure if it wasn't like insane, then he would cut that check, because what's another $5 million at this point, or however much it would end up being, because I definitely think it's 20% is definitely more than $5 million for what they're probably spending. But yeah, I mean, you can go down that path. I don't think it's something they're probably treating as too much of a realistic option, because again, I don't think Joey Maguire is going to want to sit on the sidelines for half a season.
I saw somebody, there's a couple, like sometimes people laugh and sometimes people don't know how to laugh. One was like, all right, what you need to do is suspend Joey Maguire for a week for whatever, being too nice, and then hire an interim coach. Go find a quarterback, and the interim coach will be suspended for 50. Just a joke. Just a joke.
Don't explain the jokes, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people having fun with this, and I think that when it comes to the quarterback room, like, what message would that send? Hey, Francis and Jones and Hammond and whoever else is in there. Like, I know we brought you guys in, we talked a good game and la-di-da-di-da-da, but we have no faith in you guys. So Joey Maguire is going to sit out as head coach for half the games this season so we can bring in somebody that's better than you fools. Like, that's basically what you would be telling them, because they don't need depth. They've got depth. They still got 3-4 quarterbacks technically. So it's not like you're down to one guy, and if that guy gets hurt, you're screwed. No, you just don't have a guy that's considered to be on the, or at least in maybe approaching the conversation of one of the more elite quarterbacks in the country. So yeah, that's something that if you were in a numbers situation, then you may have to consider. But given that you've got Francis and Jones and Hammond and all that, I think you would be sending an awful message to those guys that y'all aren't good enough. We need to bring in somebody, and we're willing to do it to the point of, Joey's not even going to coach 8 of our games, or 6 of our games. One
final note from Sorsby turned 21 in January of 2025. Any alleged sports wagering he did before then in Ohio and in Indiana would not have only broken NCAA rules, but also state laws. And we don't know, but we are giving you everything we can. Some of you are giving us your opinion as well, including that. What did Cincinnati know? And if they did, they'll have consequences perhaps in front of the NCAA. And that still does not affect, or it still doesn't take away that Brendan Sorsby himself is involved as far as Texas Tech is concerned.
No, I mean, they're separate stories in how they'll be looked at, although they're in the same universe as far as the crossover of him being at both places, gambling to some degree at Cincinnati, and then we don't appear to have seen anything from the Texas Tech side while he's been there for 3 months, 4 months at this point. I think the Cincinnati piece is interesting, again, because yesterday they were thought to be the narcs, if you will, and now it's like, well, they knocked on themselves if they narked, because they are in the crosshairs as well, given that they played him for an entire year if they knew about this last August. So I'm starting to think that they probably didn't narc on themselves, even though they have this legal dispute with him. I don't know how this got found out. I think that's still one of the more interesting things. And maybe it was just Prohibit, that app. Maybe that's just how this all popped off. And there wasn't some smoking gun of somebody saying, hey, Big 12 or NCAA. That sounds juicier and more interesting, but it might have been as simple as the app caught him. And that's it. But yeah, Cincinnati's now in this to some degree, and they're going to have to answer for why they played him if they did in fact know that something was up a year ago.
Justin Williams joins us, theathletic.com. He wrote the lengthy article. It was a team effort with others as well. We mentioned that Matt Baker had tried to did contact Indiana's gaming commission, and they were not going to release any information because it's an investigation, open investigation. Justin, thank you, buddy. Appreciate your time. I know it's been a whirlwind, but for you all the time, what do you know or anything different from what you wrote last night?
Yeah, I think we're still kind of parsing and figuring out some of the details. You guys mentioned it. To me, the biggest unknown here remains how and when exactly did the NCAA find out and start to investigate Sorsby's gambling history. We know and reported, and others have reported, it's thousands of bets in recent years, most of them for small dollar amounts. Some of those were actually like legal bets. There's certain, we can get into the details of that. There's certain gambling that is allowed for college athletes that are of legal betting age, but then certainly some that were not allowed under NCAA. But obviously the crux of this goes back to that 2022, his true freshman season in Indiana, because as you guys have covered, the NCAA gambling guidelines, if you bet on your own team when you're a member of that team, whether you're betting for or against, or whether you're, fixing games or not, like that's kind of a cardinal sin. And so this still all goes back to that, but there's still a lot of, I think questions and details about the process of this that we're working on, but remain unanswered.
So Justin, let's educate and also learn along the way. You just mentioned it there. What did he do that was on the up and up for people who might be confused of like, well, why is this illegal, but that's not illegal? Like UFC, for example, he was fine to do that. Can you help explain why and how all that sort of looks from that point of view?
Yeah, it's a strange distinction. And obviously it comes with the caveat that in order for it to be allowed under NCAA guidelines, the athlete would have to be of legal betting age in a state where like this sports betting is legal. But you mentioned UFC, NASCAR, horse racing. It's really sports that do not have an NCAA sanctioned championship in that sport. For instance, NCAA has sport championships in football, in basketball, in baseball. So that's why college athletes can't bet on Major League Baseball or NBA or NFL, those kind of corroborating sports. And so it does leave open, again, some kind of these weird gray areas where, we reported at The Athletic that Sorsby was gambling on UFC. That would have been allowed. And if that was something that Cincinnati athletic department was aware of, it would not have necessarily raised, any red flags or caused any legal NCAA issues. But then obviously the extent of Sorsby's gambling, based on what we've reported and has been alleged, appears to be much deeper than just legal allowed things.
So we know there's no spring portal. And man, if there was, I would think that Texas Tech would obviously be very heavily involved in that. But what would that send a message to Lloyd Jones or the kid from Tulsa or the redshirt freshman? Or, by the way, I just blanked on his name. And then, of course, Will Hammond could be back about a month into the season and maybe earlier. What do you think that would do?
Yeah, I mean, look, I guess it is interesting because in years past there would have been the spring portal, or they just recently passed this ghost transfer rule where you can't bring in a player outside of these portal windows. And so it kind of, from a Texas Tech football perspective, this comes at the worst possible time, because you're losing your star quarterback that you invested, $4 to $5 million in to get out of the transfer portal. And then you're also kind of left without a situation where you can substantially upgrade that position, upgrade your roster between now and the 2026 season. Like the history and precedent here in terms of if there is sufficient evidence that Sorsby was found to have gambled on Indiana games when he was an athlete there, like history suggests that's permanent eligibility. Like, it would be a good chance that that's the way the NCAA would rule if there's evidence for that. But then I also think, there could be a legal challenge. And we've seen that not in gambling scenarios, but we've seen Trinidad Chambliss and plenty of other athletes kind of go to court on an eligibility basis. And I wouldn't be surprised if Sorsby doesn't get an eligibility ruling that he likes, that he goes that route. And it's going to kind of leave Texas Tech in limbo, but certainly having to prepare some of those younger guys, Will Hammond, Kirk Francis, to be ready for the season.
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't know his true intentions in checking into treatment, right? But it could be like, hey, let me try this and see if this changes the way the rules are, like from his perspective. I think that's fair to at least wonder about, right, Justin? Of like, hey, hopefully you're checking in for the right reasons, but maybe if you do the mental health side of things with the NCAA and arguing for why you shouldn't be suspended. Well, hey, I'm trying to seek treatment, mental health, that sort of a thing.
Yeah, look, whatever the reason is, the treatment aspect of this is really interesting because the NCAA, I'm assuming, will not conclude its investigation until it has a chance to talk to Brendan Sorsby. That's usually kind of a standard practice of an NCAA investigation, at least have a chance to talk to the athlete. If he's in a rehab facility what does his availability look like in order to talk to the NCAA for, the next coming days or weeks? Does that then prolong whatever decision the NCAA would make? Because normally in these cases, if the NCAA is investigating for eligibility, the school would kind of deem that athlete ineligible, and then they would apply for reinstatement, and the NCAA would make its ruling here and say, like, actually, yeah, this is permanent eligibility, or it's a suspension, or whatever it might be. The rehab aspect of this could maybe slow that process. For right now, it's not a huge deal because it's not like there's a game coming next week or 2 weeks from now for Texas Tech. But certainly you'd think that they would want to know, and Sorsby would want to know as soon as possible, so that they could kind of just get their act together on both fronts and figure out what things are going to look like for Sorsby moving forward and for Texas Tech in 2026.
So, Justin, let me ask you this. We all, in the media, we have stories. It could be anything from simple, like a high school football recruit decommitting or committing or whatever, coaching changes. How much are you getting from people that are sending you information that they want you to know about, whether it, of course, you have to find out if it's true or not? How much of that's going on right now?
Oh yeah, there's tons of it. And you're right. Like, this is the case with anything. It's parsing the sources. And do you hear it from multiple places? Do you hear it from sources who you've trusted and worked with in the past? I think if you were to go on social media last night, there's like Cincinnati fans pointing to, oh, he threw an interception on the first play of this game. And there has been no, reporting or sources or insinuation that Sorsby was gambling on Cincinnati games last year or fixing matches in any ways. But all of this stuff kind of becomes part of it. I heard you guys talking before, like, there's speculation of, did Cincinnati drop the dime on him to the NCAA? And then, actually maybe that would have been a terrible decision, or they had no reason to do that. Again, I have had no reporting to this point that suggests that Cincinnati knowingly played Brendan Sorsby last year, knowing that he had, committed any kind of NCAA violations or had any gambling issues. But until we get some definitive answers, and maybe we won't ever in the terms of these NCAA investigations, all that speculation is going to be out there, and it becomes part of it. And I guess our job in the media is to kind of try and sift through and figure out what is legitimate and what is not.
So, Justin, the timing of yesterday with the statement, I'm entering treatment, and then also the news about the lawsuit with Cincinnati, was that just entirely coincidental, or was there something actually where that was intentional, that all that news dropped on the same day? Like, how did you view that?
As far as I can tell, that was a coincidence. The date for Sorsby and his legal representatives to respond to the lawsuit, that had already kind of been set for weeks. It was going to be yesterday, Monday, April 27th. And I think any of us that have ever dealt with these cases or lawyers know that they always go up until the filing date, right? It's not like something they're going to, send in a week early. So I was kind of on guard. And I think a lot of people were checking the docket for that lawsuit, just kind of waiting for a response. And then, of course, this news drops. It's all tied up together because this plays a factor in how things go forward for Sorsby in terms of the lawsuit against Cincinnati. But as of right now, as far as I can tell, it was just coincidence that the news of his gambling and the NCAA investigation broke on the same day that his legal team had to file their response in the lawsuit.
Okay, well, yeah, I wanted to clarify on that. So, what a day! What a freaking day, man! So you mentioned that as best as you know right now, Cincinnati wasn't aware. I know there was the other report that maybe they were aware of last August from the Prohibit, the Big 12 monitoring system. But if you're Cincinnati now, and yesterday you're being pointed at as maybe dropping the dime, as you and I both said, and now you're going, wait a second, we're not trying to implicate ourselves. Like, what does Cincinnati have to potentially prepare for here? Do they need to make sure they've got their T's crossed and I's dotted as far as this goes? Are they now going to be under the microscope a little bit, do you feel like?
Yeah, you mentioned, there was a USA Today report that Cincinnati was aware of Sorsby gambling as far back as last summer, 2025, before the football season. I've had sources tell us that The Athletic, the same thing. Like I mentioned before, not all college athlete gambling is illegal. So it's possible that Cincinnati was aware of gambling that wasn't necessarily illegal. I have not to this point had any indication that this was Cincinnati that kind of sparked this investigation or set it off, or that they knowingly, played Brendan Sorsby after committing violations. From Cincinnati's perspective, like, as a media member, I would love if they came out and were on the record and were saying, like, no, we definitely didn't do this or anything like that. From their perspective, I'm sure they're thinking, public perception is going to be what it is. They just have to worry about, did they actually do anything wrong in terms of an NCAA violation? And if they believe that they didn't, well, then public perception is what it is. It doesn't really matter. Honestly, if the AD came out and said something, then, there's certainly pockets of Texas Tech fans that wouldn't believe or agree with that anyways. So from their perspective, if they didn't do anything wrong or commit any violations in the eyes of the NCAA, then I think they're okay. And again, up to this point, from what we know at The Athletic, the investigation is focused purely on Brendan Sorsby, not on any of the programs that he played for. The NCAA infractions committee actually wouldn't have to get involved, in this decision if there were no schools involved. So right now it's an investigation focused on an individual, and it doesn't seem like until something changes, it involves any other programs.
This is, I know Iowa State and Iowa fans are like, hey, we were first, like we and unfairly, as it was eventually decided. But I guess it's not a surprise though, Justin, is it, that we've got a story like this? I think it's just the player itself is like, oh, whoa, because he was the crown jewel of the offseason, the quarterback get for Texas Tech. But do you find yourself having to cover sports betting more? Or do you figure that you will be covering stories like this probably more in the future?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because that kind of, you go back to that Iowa State, Iowa story and some of the implications there. There was some permanent ineligibility rulings handed down. There was some underage gambling fines, slaps on the wrist that were involved in that as well. But it's obviously different because, we're talking about one of the highest profile transfers in college football for the 2020 season, probably one of the highest paid players in college football for the 2026 season. And that makes it a huge story. But as you alluded to, this is not the first one. It's certainly not going to be the last issue of a college athlete getting involved in some kind of gambling situation. It's something the NCAA is really concerned about. It's something that a lot of schools are really concerned about. There is tons of work and education and materials that are available to these athletes. Measures that are taken. You mentioned the Prohibet and the different U.S. integrity modules and monitoring devices and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of work out there being done. But I think we all know, if an athlete wants to do something, if they want to go to a bar when they're underage, if they want to place a bet when they're underage, or if they want to, place a bet that they're not allowed to, there's probably ways for them to figure out how to do that. And unfortunately, I think this is just going to be something that college sports, on the long list of many things that they have to deal with now moving forward, I think this is one of them. And this situation specifically has kind of put that into the spotlight.
He's the biggest name, obviously Deckers, et cetera, but this isn't the last one. And this could lead to even more. Man, Justin, thank you very much. I know it's been a whirlwind. I know we'll watch what you do the rest of the way. You do a great job from theathletic.com. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Justin Williams, and the story with Brendan Sorsby, and the chat room's fired up. But by the way, here's a super chat. Remember the term willful intent to inflict damage and harm. And that's in reference to, and Kim Coulter, we know he's a huge Texas Tech guy, but that's in reference to, did Cincinnati have anything in that mode that they're doing to inflict harm? Now, I don't know how you prove that unless you got a lot of evidence or you can find it, but that is part of it. And I've seen some really weird conspiracies that I read about 2 lines and I'm out. We don't know, but it is no question. It's shaking up college football.
Well, I'm sure if there is something to that, then Texas Tech's got people that will be looking into that and will be wanting to bring them to the forefront and into the spotlight as well. I think the part about Cincinnati is, if that is the case, and this was like, all right, pal, you want to screw with us? We're going to screw with you right back. Yeah, sue us or whatnot, or don't pay us our money. All right, we'll wipe out your senior season. I think that if that was the case, then they weren't thinking it through all the way, because now here they are, and they're being implicated potentially in having knowingly played him. Now, I do think that's I think Justin was great there because he was able to explain a lot of things pretty clearly. And so if you had any questions, hopefully a lot of them were answered there. But yeah, I think it was good that he pointed out that even if Cincinnati knew that he was gambling August of 2025, as is reported, that could have been UFC bets. And so that's not illegal. He can do that. But was it UFC bets, or was it those micro baseball transactions? We don't have all of that information. So they might have known, and it just wasn't against the rules what they were aware of. But yeah, I do think Texas Tech fans rightfully are going to wonder about who knew what and for how long, and who potentially put this story out there, because it did seemingly come out of just absolute nowhere. Like, I don't know if the Tech message boards had any indication that something was on the horizon. You know, like sometimes you'll get the little teaser from Ahmad of, hey man, just letting y'all know, like, something big could be coming out in the next couple of days. Like, I don't know if there was any warnings like that, or if this was just a shock to everybody when it dropped yesterday. But yeah, it's a fascinating story, because it is the most high-profile example of gambling in college sports, and obviously a playoff team, a championship contending team that got a lot of spotlight last year is firmly in the mix here as well. And so it's a story a lot of people have interest in, and I'm fascinated to see how it plays out the rest of the way. But yeah, part of that fascination is if in fact there is some other, like, oh yeah, well, it comes to find out Cincinnati didn't know anything and they got unfairly put into the mix here, or if in fact Cincinnati did know something. And he's right. I think he pretty much answered everything about as well as possible. And if you're Cincinnati, yeah, you're not going to be believed either way. Like, I don't think if Cincinnati came out with a statement, all due respect to Kim or any other Tech fan, I don't think they're probably just taking that as face value, right? Like, they're probably not just going, oh, well, Cincinnati put out a statement, so I believe them. Probably not. So yeah, they'll have to clear their name to probably some degree, but there's no point in them trying to be too vocal right now. That let this all handle itself, and then when they get called to answer for something, then they should have their ducks in a row. But I know there is that element of somebody narked him out, and why wouldn't it be the school that he left that is in a lawsuit with him and all of that? So I don't think you're going to convince people who believe that otherwise.
Yeah, everyone. I had a couple of screenshots sent to me. One was a direct message on Twitter, and it was like an unbelievable conspiracy. That's what message boards do. That's what sometimes the chat room with a lot of you. But I like the fact that some of you are asking legitimate questions about what happened with Will Hammond. It was in late October against Oklahoma State. He tore his ACL, and his timeline to return is about a year later. And he started throwing. Obviously, they will not rush it because of the fact that Sorsby's out for appears to be the rest of the year. You just don't come back quickly, and you don't try to rush anything when it comes to an ACL. Ask Robert Griffin III, because that happened to him in the NFL. So there's that. We will have Shahan Jeyarajah today at 4. He had an interesting take on Diego Pavia. Did you see the note about Pavia and the Ravens today?
Yeah, he signed a deal, but so did Joe Fanano, the UConn quarterback. So they're both minicamp guys that are being brought in to compete. And apparently the Ravens wanted them to be on equal footing and not have this like temporary contract hanging above their heads. So it doesn't guarantee anything. It's not like Diego Pavia signed a 3-year, $25 million deal. He signed like a basic standard contract, and I guess Fanano did as well, and they'll compete in minicamp, and we'll see who comes out on the other side of that. I'd put my money on Fanano, knowing what we know as far as just size and skill and all of those types of things, lack of headaches, et cetera, lack of distractions and messiness. But yeah, it's a better day today for Diego Pavia than it was yesterday. That's for damn sure. And better than it has been for quite a few days in a row now, when he was the butt of seemingly every joke about the NFL draft. He actually, got some good news today and signed a standard deal, although it doesn't guarantee much of anything.
I want to do this because I don't want to get too late in the show, but Kansas State's head coach Jerome Tang, who was fired, has Ashley Hodge is reporting that he, and now national columnist too, that he will return, and not a surprise to join Scott Drew on his staff, effective for the next season. One of the things that Tang could do is recruit. We knew that. One of the other things he could do is he kind of was the foreman, so to speak, when it came to making players pay attention a little bit better. He had a great start at K-State, did not work out, headed back to be with Scott Drew, makes a lot of sense. And so that story is there when it comes to Baylor men's basketball.
Well, good for Jerome Tang, and I'm sure Scott Drew is thrilled, and obviously to the point of wanting to bring him back. The last time we saw Tang, it was messy with his exit from Kansas State, and just how quickly that all fell apart after seemingly being on a honeymoon there a couple of years ago. It's just been a lot of negativity and a lot of losses, and obviously it bubbled over, and they decided to make a change. And Jerome Tang, I'm sure, had a lot of different things he could have done as far as going various coaching routes, maybe just stepping away from the game to some degree, catching your breath like some guys do, and maybe just kind of being out of the view of the camera for a year and just kind of recalibrating and coming back. But him jumping right back into coaching is not a surprise either. He loves basketball, and I know he loves Scott Drew and he loves Baylor. So good for them. They were able to work something out and bring him back into the fold. And I think with what they've done in the transfer portal, there's some actual excitement there that they've brought on some pretty good players. And now you add Tang to that. And I think there's some optimism that it's been hard to come by really the last couple of years that's now starting to grow. And so I know that Baylor fans are thrilled to have Jerome Tang back in the mix because, yeah, he got a lot of the credit for the success that they had, including that national championship run. So that's a dynamic duo, he and Scott Drew. I'm sure they'll love coaching together again. You just wish it was probably under different circumstances, but that's great. That's awesome that they're reuniting.
And it's been a busy day. They got the Mingo kid from North Carolina. His brother had committed a week or two ago. He's the highly rated player from North Carolina, but he's not 100% on when he can play. And then, of course, Jerome Tang and Tess. I'm going to say this right. Tunde Yesufu is going to apparently remain in the NBA draft. There were thoughts he was going to enter the draft, maybe opt out, end up at USC or UCLA. Latest I saw was he will stay inside the draft. Not sure exactly where the projection is with him and the draft that comes up in June.
Well, I'm not too surprised by that. I mean, it's a choice that everybody's got to do their due diligence and their homework on. So I'd be interested to hear what he's been told, that he feels like that's the best path moving forward. But again, I think they've done pretty well. Like Mingo, as you mentioned there, was a big get for them. And now you bring Jerome Tang back into the mix, and it's like getting the band back together. But that Mingo win, Dylan Mingo, the 5-star point guard, that was a huge boost for them yesterday. And like I said, there's some excitement around that program, which has been sort of hard to come by as of late. So not sure if they're back competing directly for the Big 12 right away, but I do feel like they're constructing the roster in a much more manageable and smart manner, and also to have some of Scott Drew's running buddies back, including his main guy, one of his main assistants over the years, should only be looked at as positives at this point until we obviously see them out there next year. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But on paper, it should work, and you should be excited.
Shahan Jararaja, CBS Sports, coming up around the corner. Bill Jones off the radar. John McClain and Mark Eisenberg is going to join us too on 365 Sports. I'm David Smoke for Rez and also Andrew, Garrett, and Craig. This is the Smoke Show. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. Marco's Pizza, the fastest growing pizza brand in America. And online, you could order to pick up, deliver to your house, wherever you live, and even work. They've done that here at the studio here on both Elm and also MLK. It is Marco's Pizza with Bob Mock owning 5 locations in the area. Just a few years ago, there was nothing. Then 1, now 5. Marco's Pizza with all the specials. If you go to marcos.com right now, there will be 2, 3, or 4 different specials. One of them will be something like very sweet, like the cinnamon rolls, excuse me. And on top of that, 2 or 3 topping pizzas, large, small, large. I love the large pepperoni and also sausage magnifico. It is a great pizza, the one that I like the most with thin crust. It's Marco's Pizza, 5 locations, fastest growing pizza brand in America at marcos.com.
Broker is your Lennox Premier dealer. Right now, qualified buyers can make no payments and get no interest financing for 12 months on a new Lennox home comfort system. Conditions apply. Call Ray Broker Air Conditioning and Heating Specialists for details and a free estimate.
We're celebrating the Declaration of Deals at Allen Samuels in Waco. Right now, get $11,000 off a new Ram 1500 Lone Star, plus 2.9% for 72 months. Cash in on $11,000 off a new Ram 2500 Lone Star Crew Cab, or choose 0% for 36 months, plus no payments for 90 days. Feel secure with America's best full-size truck powertrain 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty at Allen Samuels.
Come by, let's be friends. are the adventurous. Determined are the leaders. Faithful are the healers. At Baylor, you'll find your calling, your people, and your purpose. Dare to be you, indeed.
It's time to compete against yourself, finding too many excuses not to work out combined with bad eating habits, and Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness can help reach inside your competitive soul. Discipline, getting results you've only dreamed about, personal training, group exercise classes, and even a tanning bed, world-class tennis facility, and pickleball courts and lessons available. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, spacious, clean workout rooms, free weights, state-of-the-art technology, weight training equipment, and no intimidation. It's time for you to react today, not tomorrow, at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Serving Central Texas since 1889, TFNB Your Bank for Life takes pride in being more than a bank. TFNB, we remain committed to these principles. If you value them too, come join us. TFNB, your bank for life.
Extreme Texas weather calls for Ray Broker, your Lennox Premier dealer. Sign up for our year-round comfort plan and keep your home the perfect temperature no matter what the forecast is. Call or visit raybroker.com now. Ray Broker, your air conditioning and heating specialist.
This 3 o'clock hour is brought to you by QC Kinetics. Feel better, move better, live better with regenerative medicine using your body's own healing abilities for natural pain relief. No surgery, no drugs, no downtime. With locations in Dallas and Houston at QCkinetics.com. It's time for the Smoke Show on 365 Sports with Craig Smoke and David Smoke.
Here we go, 365 Sports, roll along right into the 4 o'clock hour. But before we get to Shahan Jararaja when he is ready, some of you yesterday in the chat room asked me if I would help explain NIL payments, how often, how does that work? And I think it's pretty standard practice, but I did talk to a couple of people in colleges that handle the NIL. It's pretty much what you would think. There are some deals, and it depends on if you're getting money from the house settlement, which is a set number, or what programs also go above the cap with any kind of third-party NIL deals. But most of the time, you don't get anything until you enroll for classes, because what that does is protect the school once you're in classes that you just can't get up and leave. Now, I'm sure there's some lawsuits that have changed that a couple of different times. Protect your entity. You can sign an agreement, whether it's for $40,000 or for $3 million. And there are monthly payments, just like if you were an employee, although some places you get paid either every other week or the 1st and the 15th or whatever. But it is standard what you would think. There are some contracts on purpose that are backloaded to prevent the school from losing a player, although we've still seen players who leave. More schools are getting smarter and smarter with any kind of buyouts. For example, Damon Williams, Washington, among others, and even Darian Mensah had to pay a buyout from Duke to Miami. But I didn't know if it was once a month or was it semester by semester, but it's pretty standard. But the one thing that is different, it depends on the revenue you get from the house settlement compared to how much more you can go over with third-party entities or businesses that pay the players directly. And I hope that answered the question that a lot of you had during yesterday's show. Let's see. Oh, on the Brendan Sorsby story. And Rez, just give me a heads up when we have Shahab. This is from Harry Levant. He's a PhD, writes about gambling. And when all of this started to really rise to a different level in the last 2 to 4 years with the NCAA. Let there be no mistake, the NCAA is part of the gambling industry establishment. This is his opinion. The NCAA and its gambling partners have created the dangerous and defective business model that is hurting a player like a Brendan Sorsby and millions of other college students. Tonight, all that matters is offering Brendan unconditional support, understanding, and encouragement as he begins the journey to find recovery. Now, I'm going to stop right there. Some of you might go bullshit.
My first thoughts were F off.
All right,
like,
but well, I mean, Tomorrow, we will continue to expose the dangerous hypocrisy of the NCAA, the public health movement. There we go. There's that note. Will bring comprehensive regulation to the out-of-control gambling industry and its sports partners, including the NCAA.
Who was this person?
Dr. Harry Levant.
I mean, yeah, like I rolled my eyes at that. Like, okay, yeah, I don't think there's any doubts that sports leagues are in bed with gambling companies. I mean, that's clear. It's watching a sporting event. I don't know to the extent that the NCAA is directly involved, like the NFL or NBA or Major League Baseball, where they're just straight up signing deals with Kalshi and DraftKings and just plastering it everywhere that there's available space to plaster that. I don't think the NCAA has quite reached that level. And I'm not really sure how they helped create this situation. I mean, there's only so many things they can prohibit, and every time they try to prohibit anything, they get sued into oblivion and they lose those lawsuits. And then the thing they were trying to prohibit ends up being free and clear to move forward and do. So if they tried to hinder grown people who are of age to bet and preventing them from being able to bet on things that, like UFC, you really shouldn't be prohibiting, then I mean, what are they supposed to do about it? I think that's, like, to me, the first part you read there sounds like a guy who's trying to, like, yes, let's pray for Brendan Sorsby. Let's hope he gets his act together. Let's hope he's not a tragic tale. But let's also know that he's a grown-ass man who made thousands of bets and should have known better. And so now it's like, I don't know, you reap what you sow. And I'm not rooting against the young man at all, but I just, like, it sounds like you're passing the buck from the guy who broke the rules to the entity that, the way you're phrasing it, makes it sound like they forced him to do this, or they created all the conditions that he had simply no choice but to go do this. Like, bullshit. Like that's, I don't know. I'm not buying that.
I agree. And that's why after I read the one sentence, I stopped and said it myself, that I'm sure a lot of you in the chat or watching, the viewership we have, probably would call, okay, here comes an excuse, and let's use mental health. And some of it, he has an issue. We don't know how much of an issue. We don't know the story, but yeah, that's going to be something that they're going to try to lean on, I would think.
I mean, yeah, I don't even know who this guy is specifically to the story, other than just somebody commenting on it.
He is somebody. I got it. He works for an agency. I'll get you.
Well, I don't like what he has to say about, like, the mental. I don't even think he mentioned mental health there necessarily, but it's not like he's a lawyer on the case trying to go that route. I'm sure Sorsby's lawyers will go that route in any attempt to try and make sure he can get his money and play his games.
Internationally certified gambling counselor, doctor of law and public policy, leading the movement to prevent harm, bring reform and regulations to the gambling industry.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's a valiant effort. I think there's a lot of words involving this guy that could probably be cut down. The title alone, I mean, he's a very accomplished guy, obviously, but that's a lot of words to say. A guy who has concerns about gambling, and that's very valid, but the first thing I hear this guy saying is, this is why this isn't Brendan Sorsby's fault. This is the conditions created around him. Again, what did the NCAA do exactly to create this? Did they say, hey, Brendan, balls and strike bets? Hey, when you're at the Reds game, Brendan, make sure you place your bets. Like, he's a grown-ass man. He's a millionaire. Like, he knows better. And if you're a athlete in a game where you are standing to make millions and you don't know the rules, you want to plead ignorance, well, that still makes you look dumb, and that's still your fault. So, yeah, I do think there is way too much friendliness when it comes to the promotion of gambling. I think we've gone way in the wrong direction as far as, like, how prevalent it is now. I think it's one thing to have opened up the box a little bit. I think, though, that they just blew open Pandora's box and then it just sailed past that 10 times over now at this stage. So, yeah, I definitely think the concerns are valid, but this is also how you pass the buck, and athletes are suddenly the victims, even though they're the ones breaking the rules that were set in front of them. So no, I spare me with all of that. I don't think it's anybody but Brendan Sorsby's fault. It's not the NCAA's especially.
Dr. Harry Levant, Director of Gambling Policy for the Public Health Advocacy Institute, been on a lot of networks. I was going to reach out to him and pick his brain a little bit, but I was just reading. Here's what we always have tried to do. And I stopped and said that could be thought of as bullshit, depending on who you are. But there's also this lean in this day and age where people, when they know maybe there's no defense or they're in kind of trouble, get into the mental disorder, mental health. And there are many people that have that issue. But let's throw that out there and maybe it could sway some sort of a judge.
But I don't think he's doing that, though. That's
No.
my point. He's not mentioning mental health, though. So, yeah, I'm sure Sorsby will go. And we've got Shahan, by the way. Sorsby is going to go that route because there's only so many routes you can go. But I don't think that guy said anything about mental health. So that's two completely different subjects. He just sounds like a guy who's passing the buck on Sorsby decisions to the big bad entity above him, as though they could have somehow prevented this. And I don't agree with that in any way. So
Shahan Jararaja, thank you, Craig. CBS Sports joins us. Shahan, what say you on what you think with this Brendan Sorsby story? I don't imagine he can play again, not in college. Don't know the timeline, and the NCAA will take whatever time they need.
Yeah, obviously a very strange situation, one that we weren't certainly expecting to have to talk about in the middle of April. But, like you guys kind of mentioned, I mean, I think it's going to be very difficult for him based on some of the evidence that's come out to have an opportunity to play college football again. The way that it works is that if he is found to have bet on games involving his own athletic department, like Indiana back in 2022, as is alleged, then he will face permanent loss in eligibility. Now, if he bet on college football but not his own games, that could lead to a 50% suspension. And if it's professional sports, non-collegiate sports, potentially it would be less than that. But right now, I mean, we are probably looking at him losing his eligibility, and that would certainly be a big strike for Texas Tech.
Shahan, I mean, you're pretty connected, and I know this doesn't mean everybody knows everything, but did you have any sense, was there anybody that had even whispered hey, man, there's something or was this completely out of nowhere to you like it was to me and to many other people out there?
Yeah, it was definitely out of nowhere for me. We had kind of heard, or we have heard, I guess, since this has come out yesterday, that it was only in the past week or two that people started to become aware of it. That's what Texas Tech kind of feels. That's what Cincinnati at least is saying. But, it's hard to know, right? Because there's many different avenues for this sort of stuff to come up. One is, of course, there are these companies that actually regulate and monitor cell phone usage and things like that to catch gambling. So you'd think that this would have been caught, especially if we're talking about as far back as 2022, 2023, 2024. But again, at least at Texas Tech, I hadn't heard anything of the sort. I hadn't heard any rumblings of the sort. And again, especially with so much money on the line and so much winning on the line, I don't think that they would have taken a risk if they didn't think that they were safe.
Yeah. So in the end, he's not going to play. Let's just put it that way. That Will Hammond can't get back until sometime in October. They can't use the portal because there is no spring portal. In your opinion, 12 games, forget about the Big 12 championship game, which people thought they would get to. Is this a half a game? Is this more than a game? Or one game, the loss of Hammond? Or does it, the injury with Hammond and the loss of Sorsby, does it affect their win-loss total at all?
Yeah, so just to first, ironically, look at Vegas. We're their win total at FanDuel dropped from 11.5 to 10.5. So they view it as about a game. Now, of course, that doesn't finalize that Sorsby is going to be out. He hasn't officially been ruled out by the NCAA, though obviously I think that most of us anticipate that will happen. From my perspective, though, I think that it's less a conversation about how many games are they losing, and it's more a conversation about what ceiling are they losing. Because this is a Texas Tech team that I think is the best team in the Big 12 with or without Brendan Sorsby in the lineup. I think that they're still, even without him, the favorite to win the Big 12, though a much narrower favorite, I would say, than they were heading into yesterday. I think the bigger issue for this team is that it really becomes hard to see them competing with the best in college football if they don't have great quarterback play. We saw last year, this was a team that was a top 3 national defense. Their offensive line was a little bit of an inconsistent unit. And of course, they had Baron Morton out there who was playing with a fractured leg. And when he was limited, this was just not an offense that was dynamic. I actually think that their offensive line is going to take a pretty massive step forward in 2026. But again, if the passing game isn't a huge factor that you have to take into account, how do they play when they get to the college football playoff? How do they play in a potential Big 12 title game, let's say against a really good BYU team with multiple All-Americans on it? Are they able to, again, get over that hump that they did last season? So I think that this is less a question of can they get back to a similar level of what they did last year, and it's more a question of I think it makes it really hard to see them moving past what they did last year.
So I noticed earlier that you've been having the conversation about what I'm going to ask you here is like, what could Tech possibly do? Now, on the one hand, you've got Lloyd Jones and Kirk Francis and Will Hammond coming back at some point. And I think it would send a pretty bad message of like, we're going to go, Joey McGuire is going to sacrifice coaching 6 games to get a quarterback because you guys aren't good enough. I think that's kind of like what you would be saying in so many ways. I don't think Joey McGuire would go for not coaching for 6 games just to simply bring in a quarterback. So that's just where I am on that conversation. But in theory, like what routes do they have at their disposal at this point? Or do you think they just ride with what they have, Sean?
Well, I'll preface, I think they're just going to ride with what they have. Maybe they find one of the sort of names left over in the transfer portal who are mostly kind of lower level guys just to get another body on campus. But to kind of lay out the options that you're talking about, right? One is, like I mentioned, go to the transfer portal, take somebody who maybe is already there. Actually, one thing that On3's Pete Nagus pointed out is that the Division II transfer portal is a little bit less strict right now. And so it would be possible potentially to look to the Division II level. But again, you're talking about not having access to FCS guys. You're talking about not having access, of course, to guys with any FBS experience. So you're certainly not getting a surefire starter in that case. The other part of this as well, because like you said, the college football has gotten rid of their second transfer window. There's no post-spring transfer portal. And the NCAA has put in some pretty strict punishments for the idea of what people are kind of calling ghost transfers, which is players who basically did what Jake Retzlaff did last year and unenrolled from one school and showed up at another school. And you referred to it. A program could potentially face up to 50% suspension of their head coach, which would be 6 games, potentially a fine that matches 20% of their athletic department budget. So we're talking $20-30 million in fines. And so you put all that together, it's like, okay, if you could even get one of the top end guys to come in and whatever, deal with those punishments, is it necessarily going to be a difference maker for your team, especially to the tune of what it would cost you? The answer is probably not. I mean, again, I think that Will Hammond is a really talented player. And while I don't think he's going to be ready for week 1, I do think he'll be ready by midseason. And Texas Tech has a pretty manageable schedule to this point. If he's pretty much fully healthy by the time you're heading into December, I don't know that you're necessarily gaining a lot trying to replace him with somebody coming in versus just riding with him and trying to develop him across the offseason. The other thing, too, is, we've seen this with, of course, the DeMond Williams situation at Washington, where one program tried to entice him into the portal and the other school fought back. The player eventually got a little spooked and didn't ultimately decide to follow through because he was worried about ending up in a legal dispute. Well, that's going to be the case with anybody that you try to entice in that case. So what level of player is it necessarily worth it for them to get into that kind of situation? Because it's not going to be Dante Moore or Arch Manning, right? We're talking about a mid to low level power conference starter. We're talking to a mid-level group. And this is if everything goes right. So it's just so many levels of complication that you'd have to deal with. I think ultimately they're just going to ride it out. Like I mentioned, I think that even with the guys on campus, they still have a very good chance to win the Big 12. I think Will Hammond is by far the highest upside quarterback that they're going to have access to. And I think they're just going to roll with it.
Shahan, you did a story, I believe, on Diego Pavia and the fact that he dropped like others. And we had NFL Eric Galco on, who runs the East-West Shrine game, that NFL teams they were not going to take too many risks when there are red flags. Michael Trigg was one of those too, but Pavia was one, not to mention there's concerns whether he can play. Then today, along with the other quarterback they're bringing to camp, undrafted free agents, he signs a 3-year deal. Doesn't mean much other than he got a contract. What happened with him, and did people look at that the wrong way, that he was not drafted?
Yeah, I think it's as simple as he's below 5'10", has a pretty weak arm, and was tailor-made to be a great college quarterback and not at all tailor-made to be an NFL quarterback. Like, people pointed out, this was the first Heisman finalist to not be drafted since 2014. Well, look at 2013 and 14. You have guys in Colin Klein and Jordan Lynch who just also weren't NFL-type players. And Diego Pavia's not either. Now, I think that he probably made himself sweat a little bit more for an undrafted free agent contract and a camp invite because of some of these antics that he pulled. And I think that they're sort of things that, one, aren't necessarily a big deal, but two, also are something that you can't really do when you're living on the margins. But I think people turned around and really tried to make this into something that it wasn't. I mean, if he is 1000% consummate individual, I think he's still an undrafted free agent just because of the skill set he brings to the table. I mean, I went through and looked at some of his numbers and stats from his time at Vanderbilt. And I mean, again, he did a really good job of turning himself from somebody who was essentially all playmaking and adrenaline to somebody who has some technique in the intermediate passing game, but he was a total non-factor downfield. His time to throw was also relatively high because he was the type of player who was running around creating opportunities. There's not necessarily a lot of confidence that he could go downfield from the pocket. And again, none of this is a big deal. He was a great college football player. We don't necessarily need to judge him as an NFL player to say that he was great in college.
Shahan, Michael Trick going undrafted just tells me there were red flags galore, because that was not a talent issue. Sawyer Robertson going undrafted, it was just crazy to me because of what you thought going into last season and what your expectations were, and to see both those guys go undrafted, it was just crazy to me. I guess a sign of the times, unfortunately, for Dave Aranda. But how shocked were you by Sawyer not even getting a 6th round pick attached to his name or something along those lines?
Yeah, it's always interesting with some of those late round quarterbacks, especially just kind of what direction that they go, right? Because there were similar caliber players, I would have said, heading in. And I mean, Sawyer Robertson's film had obviously some issues on it, but it also had some really great stuff on it. He's an athletic player. He's somebody who goes downfield. He makes good decisions. He was very productive in this Baylor offense, despite having a lot of trouble around him, right? And so I think that Sawyer, in my mind, should have been a draftable player. But I do think that, again, once you start getting into the 6th, 7th round, it really comes down to preference. It comes down to role. It comes down to fit. I mean, a lot of the time when you're drafting for backup or third string quarterbacks too, you're talking about drafting to try to match your starting quarterback skill set. So you don't have to change up the offense around him. And I actually think that he ended up in a really solid position, backing up potentially Fernando Mendoza with the Las Vegas Raiders. But for me, I think that he deserved to be drafted. I also wasn't stunned when you get to that 6th, 7th round range. And Michael Trigg, unfortunately, I think for him, it's always, like you mentioned, obviously some of the off-field stuff, but I think that also it's just the consistency of it all. We get to see the high end of the high end. We got to see him in that LSU game last year. We got to see him in some of the wins that they had this year. And I mean, he is able to change games with his playmaking, but he doesn't do it consistently enough. I really like where he ended up again with the Dallas Cowboys. I think that that's a place where they have a lot of obviously structure there. I think that they have some really reliable players and mentors for him. So hopefully he can find a way to stick, because the talent, like you mentioned, is off the charts.
Yeah, he's probably first, second day talent. When they had their pro day, I walked up to a couple of NFL scouts only because I've been around for a long time, and one of them was with the Cowboys. And bottom line is that Trigg's his own biggest enemy, right? There's issues with whether he trusts people or they trust him or whatever else. Great talent, though. I mean, the highlights that you saw. But it was so weird 6th round, 7th. And I just felt like Dallas would be where he would go. I should have put money on it. I didn't, because they have had a tendency to go and see if someone like him works because of the talent that he has.
No, and I think that in the NFL, you got to take chances, right? You got to, and right now there's no risk once you start getting to that level, once you start getting to undrafted free agency. If you put him on a practice squad and said, figure it out for a little while, that's something that you can do if you're the Dallas Cowboys. The other part of it as well is that, I heard pretty good reviews of Michael Trigg and the way that he handled himself during his senior season at Baylor. if he was able to do that for multiple years, I think that maybe we're having also a little bit of a different conversation. I think, I give a lot of credit to Baylor's coaching staff for, I think, handling things the right way. Obviously had, sort of the incident with the sleeves and all that sort of thing early in the season. But like, I do think that overall, you mentioned it. The word has always been that he has trouble trusting people. I think that Jared Anderson, his tight ends coach, did a really good job. If he could have done it for another year, maybe we're having a different conversation.
Yeah, I just found that that interesting. Is like someone did get excited by, and then it's like we're like both he and Sawyer. But final thing for me, I know we're dipping a lot of green and gold here with you, but what do you think about Jerome Tang being back on the sidelines with Scott Drew?
Yeah, come on. We got to talk about it. I think that is, one, it's a no-brainer, right? To bring Jerome Tang back to town. I think that it's a great landing spot for him. It's a great addition for Scott Drew. You combine that with the news of Dylan Mingo coming as well. Like this is a big couple of days for Baylor basketball. But, I think that when you talk about Jerome Tang, he's somebody who obviously is such a personality in that room. I think that since he's left, like Baylor basketball has done a lot of solid stuff, but I think they have missed that edge at times that Jerome Tang brings. He does such a great job managing personalities, getting the best out of people. Obviously, he's a really good schematic defensive coach and a relentless recruiter. I think that he could potentially be a huge addition for this staff. And obviously the roster for the most part is built for 2026, but I think this could have huge implications, not just for next season, but the one after that as well.
Yeah, it didn't work for him, did it? Did you think that he would have sustained success? We have K-State fans that are in our chat room that are very vocal. They loved him, and then of course it went south. And then it's you want to run him out of town. Were you surprised that did not work out longer?
Yeah, I was. I really thought that he was kind of a no-brainer coach. I thought that he was somebody who was going to have a great time being a head coach. And, you saw the vision, right, in that first season. And in some ways, maybe the success of year one kind of put him in a bad spot, not for fan expectations, but also for his own expectations of himself. I think that there was a rush to try to win. They took some chances, obviously, including on guys like Naquan Tomlin. I think that they struggled to manage their locker room a little bit over the past 2 years. And, these things happen, right? I think that so much of success is fit, opportunity, and timing. And I just don't think that those things after year one ever quite came together. So I think it's going to be really solid for him to kind of get a chance to settle back in under obviously a head coach that he knows really well. And, I don't know if he's going to get another power conference job ever again, to be frank, but I wouldn't be surprised if he took a lower level job at some point when the timing is right and the situation is right.
Man, we appreciate it. A lot going on. I saw some of your banter back and forth with those who said, why don't they just go ahead and risk it? Go find a quarterback. And you obviously answered it with us, but also then. You had one more note, and then just a quick note. Arkansas men's and women's tennis, gone. I just saw where St. Louis University is about to drop their men's and women's tennis. And you said, somehow, though, Mississippi Valley State can afford tennis. How?
Well, and it's funny. I think that one of the big things that's lost in this conversation is that we're not talking about the idea of funding athletic programs. We're talking about funding athletic programs to the level that we funded everything forever. I've said it for a long time. I'm like, listen, I went to high school and we could afford a tennis team, right? Like, I think that you can afford to have a tennis team. You're not going to knock down your tennis courts. And again, there's travel, there's recruitment, there's scholarships. I understand all that stuff. But I think that people are being very short-sighted. And one of the things that I think that, especially for an SEC program, that you have to think about is there is going to be a point where you cannot legitimately make an argument that you're trying to do an educational endeavor, right? Like if you go to it and you say, well, football raises the most money, we got to pay them the most, and basketball, and we don't have to do all this other stuff. Well, then you suddenly have to start answering a whole lot of tough questions about, well, okay, then should people get tax exempt status for donating to your university? Should there be more oversight on how you pay players and pay coaches? This is sort of the double-edged sword that people don't want to reckon with at this point. And again, I think that tennis is for programs like that, an obvious first sport to cut, because you're mostly pulling from an international recruiting base and don't necessarily have domestic donors to deal with the same way. like at Baylor, by the way, where obviously the Hurd family has been very involved. But I think that this is something that, again, long-term, a lot of these programs are going to say, well, we're making twice as much money as we did before, but somehow we can't pay the bills.
Shahan, thank you very much. Shahan Jararaja with us a lot on 365 Sports and the Smoke Show from CBS Sports. When we come back from Dallas and Fort Worth, Bill Jones, who is from CBS Sports in Texas, looking back at the draft and also ahead to college football and his thoughts about Brendan Sorsby and more. This is 365 Sports. So today I was at a cycle class at the gym, had my best workout on the bike in forever because I did not have that ache that kept like, okay, slow down. It was an hour class. I felt great, sweat and all of that, and I couldn't do that for 4 to 5 years. But thanks to QC Kinetics, I am doing that now. Jogging about 4 times a week, playing golf without having to worry about it, including even if I have a putt, getting down to look behind the ball to the cup and see the read, if is it going straight, left, or right. QC Kinetics takes my natural biologics, takes what you have inside your body, your natural biologics, takes it, they'll draw blood, spin it, blood, plasma, platelets, and stem cells. Spin it and put it back to wherever you have joint pain, whether it's in your back or in your shoulders, your neck, your knees, your ankles, even your wrist could be also affected, and elbows. QC Kinetics has helped fix me. It's an amazing change for me, and I've only been in treatment since September, but haven't had really any kind of treatment for a couple of months because it is working. In fact, I have one appointment I can still use, but I have it now in my back pocket just in case for a tune-up. QC Kinetics, both locations. There you see the numbers in Dallas at 972-972-8610 and in Houston at 713-913-5285. If you've been getting steroid shots and injections to kick the can down the road, but they only help for a month, 2, if that long, and anyone starting to talk about surgery, do yourself a favor. Free consultation at qckinetics.com.
In the major leagues for 24 years, and let me tell you, I can feel it in my joints. Shoulders, elbows, and knees. Trust me, pain doesn't retire when you do. I tried everything to get rid of the pain. Nothing worked until QC Kinetics.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens and other patients are getting lasting relief with QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. No surgery.
I trust QC Kinetics. You should too. Let's commit to getting rid of all the pain.
Schedule your free consultation today. QC Kinetics. Better starts here.
With over 25 years of excellence in IT, Carrion Solutions is your trusted technology partner. From managed IT services to cutting-edge cybersecurity, our expert team delivers tailored solutions that drive success. Our portfolio includes products such as Veeam, Bitdefender, Microsoft, Cisco, and Fortinet. Call David Carrion and his team of experts. Call 888-522-2221 or visit us at carrionsolutions.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Hello, I'm Camille Johnson with Camille Johnson Realtors. We specialize in selling residential real estate agent all across our community, and we love serving all types of families. We have been in business at Camille Johnson Realtors for almost 9 years, and I have been a residential real estate agent for almost 40 years. And we love our partnership with 365. So thank you for partnering with me, and thank you so much to all of my clients who have made our company a success.
Join the celebration. It's 27 years for Richard Car Motors, and we're celebrating with big anniversary savings.
The GMC Sierra delivers strength, power, and a refined interior loaded with premium comfort and technology. During Richard Car's 27th anniversary sale, find savings like $9,000 off all Sierra 1500 Pro and SLE models in stock.
Thank you, Central Texas, for 27 years. Log on, call, or come by today to find big anniversary savings now.
Richard Car, they have the truck for you. Pepperoni Magnifico. Pepperoni Magnifico. Marco's Pepperoni Magnifico. Classic and crispy cut pepperoni, 3 melty cheeses, all on our fresh made dough. And starting at just $12.99 for a large, it's no wonder Marco's was named America's favorite pizza chain.
This 4 o'clock hour is brought to you by Stonewood Dental, your one-stop shop for your dental needs, specializing in teeth cleaning, fillings, crowns, sealants, root canals, IV sedation, extractions, implants, bridges, dentures, full mouth restorations, and bioaesthetic dentistry. Our priority is your comfort from the moment you walk through the front door. Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. It's time for the Smoke Show on 365 Sports with Craig Smoke and David Smoke.
And we go into this early, mid part of the 4 o'clock hour with Bill Jones from CBS Texas, and also a part of the Dallas Cowboys and a lot of their coverage. He joins us on 365 Sports. Bill, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to discuss the draft quite a bit with you, but the Brendan Sorsby story, of course, is hit front and center since yesterday. What are your thoughts as a longtime sportscaster watching the game of what is happening with him?
Well, I hate to see it. It's great to be on your show, Smokey. Love listening to you. You know how much I love Joey McGuire out at Tech and what he's done with that program, and I know a lot of people in Waco do from his time at Baylor as well. And so I hate to see it from that standpoint. Baylor fans may look at it a different way. That I was listening to you earlier, and I'm thinking, if from a football standpoint, if indeed he's not going to be playing for Tech, if you're paying that kind of money to your quarterback, it's got to cost you in a lot of ways on the field in the fall. And I know they've got an injury issue with their backup, Will Hammond, as well. And now with the new transfer portal rules this year, where there's no spring portal, it leaves them in a bind. Somehow, some way, I think they will find a quarterback to put on the field if Sorsby can't be there. But it's a pretty amazing story and came totally out of the blue yesterday to me.
Bill, as the draft was unfolding in round 1 the other night, and the reality of Caleb Downs becoming a Dallas Cowboy became clear and then ultimately did become a reality, what was going through your mind and your thoughts on not only getting Downs, but what was a little bit more of a surprise there towards the tail end in UCF's Malachi Lawrence?
Well, as far as Downs is concerned, it was just amazing to me that he was still available at pick number 11. And of course, the Cowboys wanted to make sure they got him. And so they gave up 2 fifths, which was giving up nothing, really. They made it back when they traded down later in the round and picked up 2 fourths to go down 3 spots. He's a special player. And in fact, I think, in fact, I was telling Brian Schottenheimer, I had an opportunity to sit down with him for an interview the next day. And I was telling him, I love digging into these prospects and especially from a Cowboys perspective. And I got to admit, I didn't even look at Caleb Downs until like 2 weeks before the draft, because when I first looked at him and knew about him, I was like, well, there's no way he's going to last until pick number 12. And Shotty kind of agreed with me on that. And they were as shocked as anybody that he was still on the board for them. And I don't believe I have ever seen the draft war room as happy as they were when they were able to seal the deal and get Caleb Downs. And the main reason is because especially in Christian Parker's defense, he can do so many different things. As Schottenheimer told me, he can play 4 or 5 different positions on that defense. And if you go back and study Vic Fangio's defense, especially the last couple of years in Philadelphia, with Christian Parker as his secondary coach, what Cooper DeJean has been able to do for them in terms of their personnel, the ability to cover in the slot. When they played the Cowboys, he at times would be covering Turpin. At other times, he'd cover Lamb in the slot. He'd cover Jake Ferguson in the slot. He can play a deep safety, and that's a lot of what Caleb Downs can bring too. And I don't know as much about Malachi Lawrence, but it's a premium position, and I think that they felt like they had to get their pass rusher at that point.
Yeah, I thought he was more of a, if anything, early second round, but we've heard a lot of good things about him.
I do think that they would have liked to have, even though he was their top-rated pass rusher at that point, they knew they needed to pick up extra picks, which is why they traded down with Philadelphia and picked up the extra fourths. And they were willing to trade down again. I think the other guy that if Lawrence had come off the board, the other guy that they were very interested in was C.J. Allen, the Georgia linebacker.
So on Caleb Downs, I just saw a clip, and it's on your feed, your Twitter feed, of the Texas and that playoff game a year ago, and he slices through. I mean, his instincts are insane, like a Sean Lee at linebacker, which you had mentioned as well. I mean, they haven't had somebody like that at safety in how long?
When did Darren Woodson retire?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So 20 years, but 22 years, whatever it's been. But he does. I think he's the parallels with Sean Lee in terms of his preparation. There's a funny story. It was Malik Neighbors, the LSU wide receiver. We say when this was when Caleb Downs was a true freshman at Alabama. And when they played LSU, Malik Neighbors was coming back to the huddle and he was saying, he knows our plays. He's calling out our plays before we even run them. And Caleb laughed about it and said, well, it wasn't like they had they had a pretty simplistic offense. It wasn't difficult to learn their plays, but that's the kind of preparation that he does. And just a very astute football mind, comes from a football family. It's in his DNA, but more than anything, he loves the game. He loves to study the game, and it really jumps off the screen when you watch his film.
Bill, they also had another handful of picks, also had some interesting undrafted free agents. Michael Trigg of Baylor, the tight end, Jordan Hudson, SMU. What else did you take away from last weekend as far as the Cowboys and just how they've situated this roster heading into the offseason?
Well, I think Trigg was a priority for them, and they were probably surprised that he was still available as an undrafted free agent. And by the way, he's got a great shot of making this roster, because if you look at their tight end room, they've got Jake Ferguson, they've got Luke Schoonmaker going into his contract year, and they've got Brevin Spann-Ford. They've got Princeton Fant, who is really a fullback disguised as a tight end. And so there is a big-time opening for a fourth tight end, and most all the teams in the NFL keep 4 tight ends on their 53-man roster. The position is used so much, and Schoonmaker is basically a starter because they're in 12 formation quite a bit. But as far as the rest of the draft goes, obviously they had to do defense as much as they could, which is why they did not address tight end earlier in the draft. And the tight ends really came off the board, a whole bunch of them, in the 3rd and 4th round, which would have been the prime area to get them. I do think it was very important for them to move up from those 3 5th-round picks to get 3 4th-round picks instead, because this wasn't a very deep draft. In the case of Trigg, I think it was the only reason that he fell all the way out was because teams had filled their tight end needs, and teams, especially once they get past the 3rd round, they're drafting for need as much as anything. And that's also why so many of the quarterbacks don't go for the 2nd straight year until the 6th or 7th round. And, Nussmeier almost fell all the way out of the draft.
Bill Jones with us, and CBS Texas, also a part of Dallas Cowboys and all of their coverage too. Was there a pick or two from outside of what Dallas did? Was it Ty Simpson to the Rams? Although the more and more you read how much they were impressed with him and vice versa. Was there one that you went, what are they doing, that maybe shifted the draft? I didn't see too many, honestly, in the 1st or 2nd round.
Yeah, and nothing jumps out on the Ty Simpson one though. Chase Daniel did a great video, an interview with. You can find it on his Twitter with Ty Simpson, where they were breaking down football plays. And I did not know this about Ty Simpson until I saw that video. And it was a master's class where Chase was taking him through the reads on a specific play. You could really see what kind of football brain that guy has. And I can understand why Sean McVay fell in love with this guy. He's the son of a coach, so he's been drawing up plays since he was 3 years old.
He's a lot like Bo Nix in that regard. Bo Nix is son of a high school coach as well. Nix was a guy that I really liked coming out of that draft. I just didn't study the tight ends as much in this draft. He's got limited experience, Simpson does, as far as the number of starts that he has. And there was the video that came out, and there was a lot of comments about that. Well, Sean McVay, he was alongside his GM Les Snead in their post-draft press conference, and it looked like he wasn't on board with the pick of Ty Simpson in the first round. He should win an Academy Award for that.
Yep.
He was acting. He does not want the narrative to be that Ty Simpson is the quarterback because Matthew Stafford is his quarterback. He doesn't want anyone to think that Ty Simpson's getting on the field this year. It's Matthew Stafford is his quarterback until he's ready to retire. I thought that was pretty funny, though.
Bill, there was some scuttlebutt going into the weekend that George Pickens could be on the trading block. Did you ever really give that any fuel, or did you feel like that was something that was realistic? And do you feel like it's just going to be business as usual? He'll sign his tag and whatnot, or like is there something to monitor here? I guess is what I'm trying to ask you.
I think it was something that I raised an eyebrow about because of the timing of when Stephen Jones told the media the day before the draft that they had told Perkins and his told them the week before that or told Pickens the week before that he was going to play on the franchise tag, that they weren't negotiating a long-term contract. And so that raised a red flag to me that, okay, they must be looking at wide receiver in this draft, because why would you – there's no need to make that announcement the day before the draft. It was like they were putting bait out there for make us your best offer and on the day before the draft. Clearly, though, I don't know why he said it at that time. I think it was just to make it clear that that's what the decision was. He was just being honest about it. I think that they were not doing it in order to get as trade bait, so to speak. And so I think they are fully on board with him playing on the franchise tag, and it's another prove-it year for Pickens. And the fact that Pickens' agent responded with an email saying he's going to sign the franchise tag, it hadn't happened yet, but I guess we're going to take their word for it that he is going to. I would think that he would want to at least negotiate maybe a 2-year deal. I mean, if he plays on the franchise tag this year, that's $27 million. And then if they tag him again next year, it would be a 20% raise. So you're looking at $33 million. You could do a 2-year, $65 million deal, announce it as 3 years, $100 million, but really it's a 2-year deal. And that would take care of the next couple of years. And he would get his money now rather than have to, as it is right now, he's got to wait until he plays games before he gets paid any money playing on the franchise tag. There's no bonus money involved in it.
Yeah, that's the one thing about the franchise tag is you don't get anything put in your bank. Like there's no $8, $10, $12, or $30 million signing bonus. You have to wait until you start to get into the season, or I guess the summer and season. Bill, thank you. Great stuff as always. Really appreciate you doing that. Get back to work, my friend.
All right. Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
Bill Jones, CBS, Texas, and also many of a lot of the content you see with Dallas Cowboys and the DallasCowboys.com. We appreciate his time. Now, when we come back, Craig Smoke it off the radar. John McClain around the corner. Did anyone ever look back at the grade that Patrick Mahomes received when he was drafted by the Chiefs back in the day from Texas Tech? We'll share that with you, too. Thanks to Rez and Garrett and Andrew. Thanks to you. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or Twitter, this is The Smoke Show and 365 Sports. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat is there, closing out the month of April with specials, including, of course, great trucks from Ram. The Jeep Cherokee, the Jeep Grand Cherokee, the Jeep Wagoneer, SUVs that are just stylish, comfortable, luxurious, with space, too. I drove that Jeep Cherokee. Ted Teague called me, the general manager and CEO, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and said, hey, We'd like for you to drive it around. So that morning, about 10 o'clock in the morning, I went by and switched out my car. I got theirs and drove it around. And I'm not going to say it was accidentally on purpose, but I let the next day go by too. I said, okay, I'll come back in the morning. It's a damn good SUV. My God, that's fantastic. Whether it's the Jeep Cherokee, the Grand Cherokee, the Wagoneer is unbelievable too. We've used that a couple of different times when we've been on the road with a rental car at various events that we cover. And then, of course, the pre-owned inventory they have, where I caught my attention 6 years ago when I was looking for a new car. Wasn't sure if it was going to be new or pre-owned, and I saw what they had. That Ford Explorer was nice, and it's been great ever since that time. David Gray runs the entire sales department, but he's got great people around him that also will help you out. And then, of course, Ted Teague, the CEO and general manager. Alan Samuels, Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco. It's time to compete against yourself, finding too many excuses not to work out combined with bad eating habits, and Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness can help reach inside your competitive soul. Discipline, getting results you've only dreamed about, personal training, group exercise classes, and even a tanning bed, world-class tennis facility, and pickleball courts and lessons available. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness, spacious, clean workout rooms, free weights, state-of-the-art technology, weight training equipment, and no intimidation. It's time for you to react today, not tomorrow, at Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
Declaration of Deals is at Allen Samuels in Waco. Get $11,000 off a new Ram 1500 Lone Star, plus 2.9% for 72 months. And America's best full-size truck powertrain 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty at Allen Samuels in Waco.
It's time for Craig Smokes Off the Radar.
Well, welcome back into 365 Sports. Appreciate you being a part of the show with us today. Please hit that like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And outside of that, well, let's get to some headlines and some news that are kind of off the beaten path a little bit, which is typically what we do in this segment, although we spend a lot of time talking about gambling in the NFL draft, and I actually have some gambling and NFL draft stuff to talk about depending on how much time that we have here. And I'll go ahead and get to the gambling first, because we have seen now, and coinciding with the Brendan Sorsby news and all the talk about that, on the front page of ESPN. I normally just don't go off a front page all the time, but it was interesting given our conversation that former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones became the first person, according to the AP, to plead guilty Tuesday in a gambling sweep that led to the arrest of more than 30 people, including other basketball figures and reported mobsters. Jones entered guilty pleas to 2 counts of conspiracy to commit wire fraud for his role in what prosecutors say were sports betting and rigged poker game schemes, and said he would sincerely like to apologize to the court, his family, his peers, and the NBA. He said the goal of the conspiracy was to use his insider knowledge, which prosecutors say involved non-public info about injuries to NBA stars, to make money from sports books. And he acknowledged that that violated the NBA's code of conduct. And so we can get into the details. I don't really want to get too much in the details, but I just bring this up because, like we talked about earlier with a couple of our different guests, like sports gambling is so prevalent. And here you have an example of NBA guys who know who practiced and who didn't, and they're running these elaborate poker games. And like this case is complex. There's like a lot going on in this with the rigged poker games and all of that. But just in general, like I'm curious of how much we're going to be talking about stories like this moving forward. You grew up in a generation where the word gambling was not even said publicly, basically, when it came to the world of sports. It would give you chills. Yeah, like you said that, and it was like you said the worst term you could possibly use, the most offensive thing you could possibly say. You just didn't even bring it up because it was so taboo. And now this segment's brought to you by DraftKings. No, but like that's basically what it is, right? I saw how many people were pointing out the irony of various times where like ESPN was talking about the Brendan Sorsby story, and on the bottom line, it's like BetGM and BetMGM is scrolling. And I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody did post where apparently, I don't know. I don't want to like spread false info, but I do know there was that advertisement, and then I think somebody might have noticed it amidst the segment and decided to like black it out or to take it off or whatever. But yeah, it's the networks that cover sports, the sports leagues themselves, they're all in bed because this is an easy way to make money for all of them. And I'm just fascinated, I guess. I don't really have anything to report other than, like, here's a story from the NBA, for example. We got the Brendan Sorsby story. There's some others going on in college basketball. I just wonder where we are in the next few years and how often we're talking about stuff like this.
I can update myself, and that's fine. There are so many things that I can remember having topics about that I just never – not that I didn't think they would happen. One of them was gambling because obviously Pete Rose, and then there was also – you know, even back in the day, really before I was born, with Boston College and a few others, but it was just a verboten thing. And the other thing was that players would get paid because then you were going to get put on probation. And now there are so many things that have changed, but gambling is everywhere. And now you have gambling analysts doing segments on ESPN.
Yeah.
And other pregame shows, because it's so prevalent. And I think the explosion occurred with the fantasy football stuff. I think and now it's, of course, carried on to so much more.
I mean, fantasy football, the money attached to it was whatever you and your buddies created back in the day. Now, though, yeah, you sign up and you got full websites to do that for you and handle the money and all that kind of jazz. So, yeah, I mean, fantasy sports, fantasy football, that definitely fed the beast. And now you've got like that NBA story. There's also, you know what else was out today? NCAA reviews details of Fordham point shaving plot.
Yep.
NCAA released findings from an investigation Tuesday revealing how an alleged gambling ring under federal indictment approached players of Fordham men's basketball under the guise of being NIL agents. Before a game in 2024, leading to two former players being ruled permanently ineligible. Former Fordham players Elijah Gray and Will Richardson allegedly communicated with known bettors and a former NBA player. A lot of former NBA guys getting involved to keep their income flowing, I guess, and stuff like this. But they met with known bettors and former NBA player about throwing a game against Duquesne in February of 2024 in exchange for $10,000 to $15,000 apiece. So that's also just from today. I know that story's been out there for a while longer, but some of the details are being released today as that continues to go on. So Gray told the NCAA he agreed to lose the game, but ultimately reconsidered and then said he played with normal effort in the win for Fordham, according to the findings. He agreed that he violated ethical conduct rules by providing info to a known bettor, but maintained he did not follow through on the scheme, according to the NCAA. And yeah, so these guys approached them, mobsters or gamblers, and said they're NIL agents. And so you've opened the door to a lot of seedy folk, and you've opened up a lot of avenues for people who want to take advantage of situations to take advantage of some situations. So I'm just, I mean, we spent so much time talking about Sorsby, and here's two stories from the world of basketball. Just today alone, we're talking about sports gambling, rigged games, like things of that nature. It's just wild. So this is a new reality, and this is going to not be so off the radar moving forward. Meanwhile, one update as far as contracts go in the NFL, a guy who Big 12 fans will be very familiar with, Michigan fans would be very familiar with him as well. I brought up Quentin Johnston, former TCU star, I think it was about a month ago or so, in regards to his contract and things of that nature. But the Chargers wide receiver now under contract for 2 more seasons as the Chargers exercise his 5th-year option. So they had to make a decision by the end of this week. The deadline for people from his draft class, the 2023 class that were first rounders. And so here he is. He's gotten his 5th-year option exercised, and he will be now with the Chargers for the next couple of seasons. There were some thoughts, like I saw him thrown about in like some trade talk discussion and things like that, but he's had a pretty solid career, and he's playing for Jim Harbaugh, which has got to be really interesting. But basically just want to say congrats to Quentin Johnston. I really loved watching him in high school, and then obviously what he did at TCU as well. I know it's not been quite the career for a top half of the first round type of player, as maybe like he's not as big of a star as maybe you hoped he could be at this point, but he's been pretty solid to pretty good at times. And so congratulations to him. I don't know where he ranks in your all-time like players you watched at the high school level and then what they became as pros, but he was good at Temple. They couldn't beat Midway.
Because we did Midway football, and they're in the same district, and if not, they played each other in non-district. And Temple's created has a great pipeline, but they can't beat Midway. They've beaten them like once and 12 times, and they kept Craig, who's the cornerback, Tomlinson, for Midway, who's gave up about 6 to 8 inches. He ended up playing at TCU. And is in the NFL. Yeah, Trey Tomlinson shut him down. I don't know if it was a scheme or what, but that he never really did much against him.
Tre'Vius Hodges, which is what he was for many years until he got to like the NFL, and then now he's Trey Tomlinson, related to LaDainian Tomlinson. I think that's probably a big part of taking on that name, but we just knew him as Tre'Vius Hodges. And yeah, he and Quentin Johnston had some fun battles, but Quentin Johnston getting his contract worked out. He's got a couple more years now playing for Harbaugh and the Chargers. And then meanwhile, I don't know how much you've been watching some of the postseasons going on, but I really enjoyed watching some hockey last night. Had the Penguins defeating the Flyers 3-2 to cut that series down to a 3-2 Flyers lead. Also had Vegas beating Utah 5-4 in overtime. But tonight in the NHL, 3 games. Got the Buffalo Sabres playing host to the Boston Bruins. Buffalo can close it out. They lead that series 3-1. They're at home, 6:30 on TNT True TV and also HBO Max if you prefer streaming. Then also tonight, the Stars against Minnesota. That's a 7:00 tip-off as that series is tied at 2 apiece. So there you go with that one. And then Anaheim and Edmonton, 9:00 face-off for that one. Anaheim can close it out on the road in Canada if they were to win tonight, as they are leading that series 3-1. So the Stars Wild will be on ESPN2.
That's a great series, damn.
So the first and last games will be on the Turner networks. So HBO Max, TNT, True TV, and then the middle game there, Stars and Wild, will be there on ESPN2. So you got 3 NHL games coming your way. And I've enjoyed watching Minnesota, Dallas. I've dabbled with some of the other games. I watched a bit of Flyers, Penguins last night. I'm definitely one of those Johnny-come-latelys when it comes to watching hockey at this time of year, as opposed to watching it more during the regular season. I've just never gotten to the regular season quite as much, even though I follow along with it. And I will say this, I think that the team that gets the most lauded for, like, as far as analyst panels go, like we always hear how great, which is now ESPN, but Turner basketball with Charles and Shaq. And I'm not the biggest Shaq as an analyst guy. Charles and Kenny and that whole crew, Ernie Johnson, the dudes who do hockey are absolutely incredible at what they do. Like, they are excellent. They are absolutely excellent. Every time I've watched them for, it's been a while now, I just think they do an incredible job in making it interesting. And so I'll be tuned into a little bit of that tonight. But do you watch any of the hockey playoffs, or is it too early for you to be watching?
Because of the show I listen to when I'm on my way and then working out in Dallas, they have a guy that comes on to break down hockey. Forgot his name, but he's just kind of part of their staff. And then they had Bob Wischusen on today, who does football but also does hockey. It was fantastic. The Wild and Stars, these are 2 teams that should play in the conference semis or finals, but they're playing right off the top, and it's brought a tremendous amount. I'm not trying to act like I know what they're doing half the time, like soccer, but I have watched it. It is very intense.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. And Anson Carter, Paul Bissonnette, Wayne Gretzky's on there on Turner. I forget their version of Ernie Johnson. His name's escaping me right now, but I just think that I know like Talking Chicklets is one of the most popular podcasts in the world, and it's a super popular hockey podcast that Bissonnette's a part of. But they just, even if you're not a hockey fan, like I'm not necessarily by definition, they make me feel like I'm super into it. I just think they're excellent. They deserve all the flowers that like the basketball side of things has received over the years. Different style, but just as informative and entertaining in my opinion.
Liam McHugh.
Liam McHugh. Okay, yeah, they do an awesome job. Gretzky's great, but Bissonnette's obviously like the main guy, the kind of, I guess, a wild man in some ways, and probably the guy, because of that podcast, who's the most popular outside of just Gretzky naturally being as popular as he is. But there you go. Some hockey tonight, and I will definitely be watching those guys break it all down a little bit later. And then tonight in the NBA, 3 games. You got Sixers and Celtics, and Boston leads that series 3-1, so they can close it out at home, 6 o'clock on ESPN. You've got Hawks and Knicks, Game 5, series tied at 2 apiece at Madison Square Garden on NBC and Peacock. And then in the nightcap, Trailblazers and Spurs. San Antonio can close it out. They are up 3-1, 8:30 on ESPN. And the Spurs are pretty dang good. And I don't know how much you pay attention nowadays versus in yesteryear with Duncan and Robinson and all those guys. But Spurs have got something cooking.
They always get a great big man, right?
Yeah.
David Robinson, Tim Duncan, and now Wembanyama. He's unbelievable.
Yep. So 3 games tonight. So plenty to watch. And if you dabble, like some people dabble, then there's plenty to bet on as well for those who choose such things. But there you go.
Well, Craig, one news that just broke. We knew this was coming. NCAA men's basketball tournament is set to move to 76 teams. That now is official. It was at one time 16, then 32, then 48, then 60, whatever, 4, 68, and now it's going to go up. This just happened, going to 76.
Okay, so 8 more teams make it.
8 more Division I, Power 4 most likely teams make it.
Yeah, so congrats
Power 5,
to
with Big East.
Congrats to Oklahoma, who would now make it, Auburn, who would now make it, and teams like that who would now make it that otherwise didn't. College basketball is not my favorite thing to begin with. I like it, I enjoy it, but I'm just not fanatical about it, if that makes sense. Until March, like there's things along the I loved watching AJ DeBanza play this year. I mean, anytime he was on TV, I'm like, I'm going to stop down and watch him. But right. I'm just not super into it like Evan Miyakawa's into it or other people that we know. So from that standpoint, like I'm not maybe as adamant about it as other people are, but I think you're watering it down. And I know the argument will be, no, it's more basketball. How is more basketball bad? I just think the bar, the threshold to meet just gets lower and lower. And I think that's going to be the case in football when they expand any further past, about 16. I just think you're allowing teams to be mediocre and feel rewarded for being mediocre. And there's still incentive to be successful. But I don't know. I just think you're lowering the standard. You're lowering the bar. And 8 teams. Oh, Craig, you're overreacting. It's 8 teams. I don't know, man. I'm just not a fan of watering things down for the sake of making money, which, let's be honest, is all this is for. This is not because
they're not doing it because they want more teams included. They're doing it because more teams included equal more money.
Well, I'm sure Greg Sankey's pushing it because he wants more teams included. So now, you have Texas and Oklahoma and Auburn and whoever getting in.
Yeah.
But I don't like it. I'll live with it, but I just think they're watering everything down as much as they can.
He is on record at wanting more in the NCAA tournament, but not going to 24 when it comes to football rather than get from 12 to 16. We are now joined by the Hall of Fame columnist himself, John McClain, on Tuesdays joins us. And John, thank you very much, buddy. Craig and David Smoak with 365 Sports, the Smoke Show. What is your reaction, to Brendan Sorsby?
I love that, the Smoke Show. And then you see you two. No offense. And first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to Scott Drew getting back Jerome Tang.
Yep.
And also the Mingo brothers. Boy, after last season being such a disaster, fans down here in Houston are so pumped about Baylor basketball, and everybody should be excited. Anyway, the Sorsby case, and I know you guys have talked about it a lot, and it's not the government after him, it's the NCAA. And the NCAA, unless it can be proved that he somehow shaved points, which I can't imagine they're going to be able to do that. And we'd be nuts if we think there aren't players all over the country doing this. Some of them are dumb enough to use their own name. And Sorsby could go play in the NAIA. He could go to that other UFL football league. He could go to Canada. He could get a judge and try to find a judge like Trinidad Chambliss found Diego Pavia and other players who have not gotten as much attention, found a judge that took on the NCAA and shot down the ruling, and the NCAA lost. Or he just wait and go into next year's draft, go work with a quarterback guru, because there's plenty of good ones around the country, and then he would do his PR tour, in which he would talk to the media, he would talk to teams, and he'd be ready next year. He'd go to Texas Tech's Pro Day. But sometimes I think, how can these guys be so stupid? But then I think back when I was that age and I was growing up in Waco, and I did a lot of really stupid things. And I'm just glad there was no social media. Gambling is one thing I didn't do, except one time when I was at the Waco Tribune-Herald. My first year, I made $110 a week. And I thought, boy, I'm working for Dave Campbell and Hollis Biddle. That means I'm a big deal. I know football. I'm going to bet. I bet making $110 a week. I lost $500 that season. Have never bet a thing again on football, and don't bet at all except first two rounds of the NCAA tournament when Carol and I go to Las Vegas with my good buddy from growing up, Gary Horn, and his wife, Kelly. And I think we'll see Sorsby again, but boy, I'm assuming that he went into the program when he saw they had him by the basketballs. And at that point, you better do something. And Tech, we don't feel sorry for Tech because of all the money they've spent, and certainly the money doesn't hurt them. Will Hammond, at the earliest, is supposed to be back in October. They have some quarterback on the roster I've never heard of. You can't go get a guy from the portal because you'll be penalized. But you know what? They'll have to run the ball a lot. They'll have to get some great coaching. Nobody feels sorry for them because they have done a great job in NIL. But I got some Tech fans down here, including a producer on our movie company, Mad Dog Entertainment. He's a diehard Tech fan, and he just devastated because he was so fired up about Sorsby.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's just getting the rug pulled out from underneath you, just out of complete nowhere. So definitely sympathize with the Tech fans from that standpoint. John, you kind of mentioned that he's got a lot of options if he's not getting his eligibility back. Does it affect his draft stock at all if he has to not play this year and he either waits or does the UFL thing or whatever? Like, are NFL teams going to look down on him, or would that change his status in any way, in your opinion?
Well, they'll be investigating him like crazy because you want to know, you want to find out every single thing, and then you got to try to guess, will he ever do it again, because it's illegal in the NFL as well. And I think he ought to go to a small college so he can get stuff on tape. You've got what he did at Cincinnati, and we think about what he could have done at Texas Tech. But I think he needs to get stuff on tape. He needs to go to pro days and hopefully get an invitation to the combine. Maybe they won't. But based on what we've seen of him so far and how highly thought of he is, and next year's a bad draft to be coming out because there's so many good quarterbacks. But if somebody gets him like third round, that could turn out to be a great deal.
So the draft has come and gone. The Texans loaded up with their selections. Keelan Rutledge, the guard from Georgia Tech, the first guy that they picked there at 26 overall. I don't feel like there's like big splashes really anywhere in here, but how has kind of the reception been to what Houston accomplished over those couple of days? And do you feel like they're in a better spot than they were before the draft?
Well, first of all, I gave the Texans a B minus, gave the Cowboys an A minus. Thought the Cowboys had a really good draft. I think everybody does, except Cowboy haters who are nitpicking at something like you're trying to pick a pimple to make it burst. And it's not going to happen. Cowboys did have a good draft. That gets all their fans' hopes up. Cowboys Texans play this season. Can't wait for that game, as I do every 4 years. But the Texans, all through the offseason, I've been saying if they don't improve their running game and their interior offensive line, everybody should be fired. And I know a lot of people had them taking a defensive tackle in the first round. I never had anything but an offensive lineman. And I thought they needed two. And first, to improve the running game for C.J. Stroud, a running game that was mediocre at best last season. And in fairness to them, their leading rusher, Joe Mixon, did not play a down, was nowhere to be seen, has now been cut. And he played really well in 2024. So they went in without their leading rusher, and it showed. And so they traded for David Montgomery, a touchdown machine from the Lions. David has 33 touchdowns over the last 3 seasons, Texans rushing. Texans have 34. Last year, playing part-time role behind Jahmyr Gibbs, he had 8. Texans had 9. So that was a good start. On one of my shows here in Houston on the Texans flagship last week, they made me the general manager. I was Nick Caserio. I made every pick. I made every trade. And I traded out of the first round. And my first pick in the second round was Georgia Tech guard Keelan Rutledge, because he didn't allow a sack last season, but mainly he's great in the run. He is mean. He's nasty. I tell people he wants to hit people so hard they blow snot bubbles.
Oh.
And he is a young version of the new left guard, Wyatt Teller, who's been that way his whole career with Buffalo and Cleveland. We don't know. He'll turn 32 next season. He was hurt a little last season. If he can still play that well. But they went into the draft not needing a starter at any position. And they traded up to get Rutledge. And I say, if you got the draft capital to do it, and there's a guy that you think would fit perfectly, do it. They did that with Gabe McDonald in the second round because the Giants were about to take him. They traded one spot ahead of the Giants. And they took McDonald, the best defensive tackle and the best run stopper at defensive tackle. And I'm a sucker for when guys cry, and he cried like a baby. Now, everybody here loves Keelan Rutledge because this is the only city where you draft a guard and people are going to give you a standing ovation because their offensive line has been pathetic for the last 2 years, and that's putting it lightly. And then they didn't bring back like 3 of their defensive tackles. They still have their starters, Sheldon Rankins and Tommy Togiai, and to be able to add McDonald in the middle of that defense, people have got even more fired up about the moves general manager Nick Caserio has made.
John, is there a supplemental draft that could be an option for Brendan Sorby? I know that that's not what it used to be.
I don't think they even had one last year. It used to be for guys that couldn't get in the regular draft or got kicked out of school or something. Remember, Brian Bosworth, the Boz supplemental pick, Bernie Kosar. He and his agent had a plan to manipulate the draft so he could go to the Browns. He's the only guy in history that ever wanted to go to Cleveland, and he got his way and turned out to be one of the best quarterbacks in their franchise's history. But now you see some, and it's guys that are kicked out of school, multiple violations, and you don't see anybody picked anymore who's any good if you pick anybody at all.
John, there was, I think, a clear favorite as far as the most controversial pick, and that was Ty Simpson going as early as he did. Are you side-eyeing it the way a lot of people have side-eyed that, or does it make sense at this point? Sean McVay's reaction and all that they've said since then. What are your thoughts on that move by the Rams?
Well, first of all, I think I was stunned because I thought with Matthew Stafford working on a renegotiated extension of his contract, he's 38, he's in great health, he played great, 41 touchdown passes, MVP. If Aaron Rodgers can play at least 42 and Tom Brady to 45, who's to say Stafford can't? And I think, and I don't know, I think Stafford has told McVay and Les Snead, the GM, look, this is my plan. And so they're like, okay, we got a chance to get a another quarterback with our 2 number 1 picks. And so as Simpson announced on ESPN, I think it was ESPN radio, he'd met privately for hours with McVay, and they did not want it out. They didn't tell him they're going to draft him for sure, but they told.
Oh, I think it froze up. Yeah, looks like it froze
I don't
up.
think
That's
I know
too
that
bad.
it froze up.
I got a lot more I wanted to ask John. Rez, can we reconnect to him if we possibly can and see if we can get the feedback? Would love to do that if that's possible. One of the there we go. There we go. Good.
Every night when Ty Simpson goes to bed, he should be on his knees thanking the Lord that he's gone to Sean McVay, and he's gone to Los Angeles Rams, and he's gone to a perennial Super Bowl contender that's a great organization. The only thing he won't like are the taxes. And I think and he's going to learn from Matthew Stafford, who's destined for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So, yes, it was surprising, but I think they've been told, and no matter if they admit it, by Stafford what his plans are, and they thought this is the time to get it, even though we could use a receiver, even though we could use another pass rusher because we've got defensive linemen's contracts coming up and tough decisions have to be made. And so I don't think it may have caught all of us off guard, but the Rams have a plan. They're not haphazard. They're not the Cowboys or the Browns or the Jets. They're the Rams.
Yeah, the 49ers, the Rams. I remember, and I thought it might have been Ozzie Newsome who did a great job with Baltimore. Pittsburgh used to let the draft come to them. They didn't reach too much. Of course, that changes with administrations changing at the top of the food chain at each franchise. But the Cowboys seemed to let that happen, even though they moved up one to get Caleb Downs and gave up whatever it was. They let Caleb Downs fall to them without jumping up and losing a pretty good pick. How did the best player, in my opinion, in college football drop to number 11?
Louis Riddick from ESPN, former pro personnel department guy with Philadelphia. I respect his opinion greatly. He said if he had right now to pick a player from this draft that he said had best chance to go to the Hall of Fame, it would be Caleb Downs. Now, I think he can be another Darren Woodson, a playmaker, can play around the line of scrimmage. He can play deep. He's got great hands. He's got good speed. He's a leader. He's great for culture. It is amazing he got down that far, but that's because teams just don't want to take safeties that high. And the Cowboys didn't do anything special. Your dog could have taken Caleb Downs. But the fact is, it's great for that organization. I'm happy for Jerry Jones and Brian Schottenheimer. They wanted to improve their defense, 5 of the first 6 defense, 3 edge rushers. They did a tremendous job in the draft, starting with Downs.
So, John, we had a fellow Baylor alumni of yours, Shahan Jayaraja, on earlier to talk about a variety of things. I had to ask him, and I have to ask you as well, Sawyer Robertson going entirely undrafted, Michael Trigg going entirely undrafted. Now, I know with Michael Trigg, at least there's some off the field things that could have been more of a concern there. But how surprised of it all were you by both those guys not hearing their name called?
Well, I was surprised Baylor only had 2 players drafted, and they were both low, which shows you the state of Baylor football right now. And I'll tell you this about Sawyer, going into last season when we were all so high on Baylor, especially the offense, especially what they'd done, even in the loss to LSU at the Texas Bowl, in which he and Garrett Nussmeier dueled it out. And even though Nussmeier won, Robertson outplayed him. And the only question people had is, why didn't he run more? And then they were talking about his foot, and John Gruden did everything he could to pump him up. Gruden loves him. And I am really happy for him that he's gone to the Raiders. He's gone to an organization in which he will have Clint Kubiak, a great quarterback coach, working with him. Clint does a tremendous job, and I'm happy for him. I wish he'd been drafted, but the truth is, if you're not going to be drafted in the 5th round, you don't want to be drafted, because then you have teams bidding for you. You see some guys getting $250,000 to sign as an undrafted free agent, so I figure he'll be on the practice squad this year. He'll learn from Kirk Cousins, just like Fernando Mendoza. It's a great situation for him. As far as As far as Trigg, you guys know he had baggage, attitude issues, and hopefully he does really well with the Cowboys.
It was interesting to see you or hear you say like the Raiders being a good situation, but it was really weird, John. I felt like the Jets had an awesome draft. I felt like the Browns had a really productive draft. I feel like the Raiders are in good hands right now. Like, I don't know what world I'm living in, but I felt like those typical at the top of the draft every year teams maybe did something pretty good across the board.
They like to win March in free agency, and they like to win April, and then they don't win squat during the season. Now, if you got 2 number 1 picks like the Browns and the Jets, how can you not have a good draft? And I think it's just ridiculous that every year, maybe finally, they'll be good, although I have less confidence in the Jets than any organization because their owner, Woody Johnson, gets way too involved in decisions that never comes out how involved he is. I've been told by former executives. And the Browns, I'm not sure about Todd Monken, the new coach. They assume they're going to get their quarterback next year. And but it is fun to see them. I thought that of those teams you just mentioned did great. Raiders, of course, first pick, get Mendoza. There's no excuse for them not to do a good job.
Yeah, there's no question. And with Brady involved, how much he's like part owner, whatever it is, how much influence can he actually have?
Well, John Spytek, the general manager, has been put in charge of the rebuild. John Spytek was in Denver with Gary Kubiak when they won Super Bowl 50. I've talked to Gary about him and people he has in that organization that were in Denver, and Kubiak loves him, thinks he'll do a really good job. Mark Davis, the owner, is staying out of it, and he listened to a person who knows what he's talking about, Tom Brady. Brady and Spytek won a Super Bowl together in Tampa. So Spytek is in charge, and he consults with Brady a lot. And, there was talk last year, it was Brady that wanted Chip, the offensive coordinator. Yeah. And that Pete Carroll did not, and that was a disaster. But it helped him get Fernando Mendoza. So Brady's involved, but he's not there going to work every day. He's got so many things going on around the world, but he's a good resource for them. And right now, it's hard to believe the Raiders look like they are back on track, and Al Davis won't have to be spinning in his grave constantly like he has been in the recent years.
My last thing then, bringing up Brady, how much impact do you think Troy Aikman will have in Miami? And why did Jerry never want to at least get him more involved?
Well, first of all, I'm sure nobody thought about that. Brady's an owner, and hiring a player and a broadcaster, it's a terrible conflict of interest for Aikman. I cannot believe the NFL is going to let this happen. And he did that story 2 weeks ago with Clarence Hill in Fort Worth about the advantages he has that the Cowboys don't when it comes to information. If I were opponents, I would not let him come into the meetings, pre-production meetings. I would not let him go to practice because that's what they did to Brady in 2024. Somehow the NFL decided to let Brady do all that stuff. It's a terrible conflict of interest. I don't like it. Troy's a smart guy, but it doesn't mean he can be a good executive, but they can certainly run things by him when it comes to offense, when it comes to quarterback, because I think he has proven. He proved what he could do on the field when he played for the Cowboys, but boy, he has proved since he became a broadcaster, and I thought he would be full of pablum, that he has been outstanding.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Sick 'em Bears.
Got a nice chunk with John McClain. Was wonderful. Thank you to John McClain, Hall of Fame columnist, with us mostly on Tuesdays. All right. We have a few things to get to, including we'll have the wheel, we'll have the quizzes. And yesterday I took one on the chin because I jumped too quickly to one, and then the poll results. So here we go with the wheel. What state do you see the most in the best team?
Interesting way to phrase that. Yeah, I mean, I guess the most notable thing that you see with winning teams is the alignment, whether it's GM, head coach, and players, or it's AD, president, head coach, players. That's to me the thing that you see most often. It's very rare that you have a lot of bickering going on and infighting and backstabbing and things like that, and things are getting done at a really high successful level. So, I mean, yeah, not every team has a great quarterback that's successful. Not every team that is successful has great defense necessarily. So yeah, I guess I would say the chain of command being pretty much as you can be on the same page. And I'm sure there's examples where that's not the case all the time, but for the most part, I think it gives you a much better shot of being successful and not being successful.
Well, if it was a certain sport, then we could probably say, like in the NFL, or college football, the quarterback. But yeah,
but Fernando Mendoza could be put on the Raiders if they give him the same team they've had. I don't give a damn how good he is. They're still the Raiders.
But I'm not saying that they're successful, because they're not part of the best teams until they prove it with him. No question. You hear about universities, colleges that have to have the board, the president, and the AD all down the spine all together. That doesn't always happen. And when it doesn't, some things can happen. And I think in a pro franchise, you have to have the owner who understands his role, lets the general manager and personnel people make the decisions, and then gives the groceries for the head coach to cook in the kitchen. In fact, Bill Parcells once said that if I'm going to be the one that cooks the meal, I want to buy the groceries. Now to the quizzes today, 2 of them. The first one is, and here is the question. That's okay. That's okay. And here we go. Oh, this is on April 28th, 1967, one of these, the most famous stands in sports history occurred when a world-class athlete refused induction into the U.S. Army. Who was the iconic figure? That is Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I mean you were alive for that, and I would have known that too. I think maybe with the pre 1980 questions, you can let me try to see and just throw it out there, whereas you lived it.
Yeah,
so,
no, you're right. That's very. How come I can remember that, but not 5 years?
And as everybody knows, I always want the spotlight on myself. So I want more.
You would rather
camera.
be darkened out and voice only.
Yeah, I would love to be voice only. So yeah, it's Muhammad Ali.
All of these guys had comments, had their opinions on many things, but yeah, it was Ali, and then he was stripped of his title, and eventually they had a tournament. Joe Frazier won it, and of course they had the great 3 fights, including the first one in 1971. It's Muhammad Ali.
So let's see. There. Citing his religious beliefs and opposition to the Vietnam War, Ali declared, "I ain't got no quarrel with those Viet Cong." His refusal to be drafted led to a conviction for draft evasion and a 3-year exile during his prime. The U.S. Supreme Court overturned the conviction in 1971, clearing the way for his Rumble in the Jungle comeback.
Yep. So he did come back, a couple of fights, then Frazier beat him. And then, of course, they all that time. It was a great time in boxing, no question, with Ali, Frazier, Foreman, Norton, and many others.
Yeah, there was a fight this past weekend, and now I'm blanking on the names. If I'd just be randomly asked me, I'd have been able to tell you more details. But now that I have to think about it myself, I'm blanking on who fought. Was it Gervonta Davis? I think it might have been.
I don't even know who
Tank
that is,
Davis.
Greg. I don't know.
They had, surprise, another controversial outcome in a big-time, heavily promoted boxing match where a large number of people felt like the guy who should have won got screwed over by the judge. Like boxing, I just can't take it seriously anymore. I think it's so corrupt. I think it is just so dirty. Like, yeah, when you get down to the sweet science and the actual athleticism and the lessons that it teaches you, and you think and harken back to the days of Kings and when you had a heavyweight division like that, I know there's still a lot of great fighters. There's probably more pound for pound, like really good fighters nowadays. And I think that's probably just like athletes in general, that they're just better athletically, like overall, because of all the science and just natural evolution. But yeah, I just boxing to me, I keep trying to get into it. And between it being freak show fights for a quick buck on Netflix with guys who aren't really real boxers, or they're guys who are about 10 years past their prime fighting guys who aren't real boxers, I can't do it anymore with boxing. Like I don't know.
let me say this. There was one title. It was like the WBC, and then there's the WBA, then there was the IBF and all that. And of course, then you started having split champions, kind of like in college football. You'd have the AP and UPI, and then the promoters in Aram and Bob Aram and Don King, among others. And there was some great, man, in the 70s and even early 80s when you had the great heavyweight fights. And this is not me being nostalgic, but then you also had Benitez and Duran and Leonard and Hearns and Hagler. You had great fights. And now I can't tell you, like you said, they had a great fight. I have no idea who fought.
Yeah, I mean, I know of Gervonta Davis. I know he's a very talented guy, but there were some, I guess, I think that's who it was from here recently that I came across like yesterday, and I just rolled my eyes. I was like, yeah, sounds right. Typical boxing, big matchup that gets painted differently because there's rogue judges or there's corruption, or like I just don't trust the people running the sport. Again, and that's the big thing about like circling all the way back to the beginning of the show and the Brendan Sorsby story is like if you can't believe in the integrity of this stuff, then it's really hard to give it any substance whatsoever. And yeah, I just don't believe in the integrity of boxing at this point. It's just a dirty kind of ran sport. And I know I did have some hope for it, at least initially, when Dana White and Nick Khan and all those TKO guys launched Zuffa Boxing, but it's been a fart in the wind, man. It's been not even just a fart in the wind. It's been a fart in the tornado winds. It's been completely irrelevant. And I know that they've had some marquee names they've tried to promote or whatever. But like, did you even know that they've started their promotion yet? Zuffa Boxing? Were you even aware that Zuffa Boxing's been an ongoing thing? No, they've had a few events now. So yeah, I don't know. I just think I'm too detached at this point to probably return to boxing. And I don't see how in my lifetime the sport gets cleaned up and organized the way to where I don't just side-eye it every time and feel like, well, how will they screw over this guy on the cards at the end of the night, right? Like, that's what I think about when I watch it now. So,
yeah,
wish I could have watched it back in the – I know there's always controversy and corruption to some degree, but I wish I could have watched back then.
When guys who aren't really boxers are now fighting for championships because of clicks and views and all of that, that kind of turned me off as well. Next quiz question. On this day in 1966, a dynasty won Game 7 for another title. Afterward, the Hall of Fame coach retired, named his iconic center as his successor, becoming the first black head coach in the United States in pro sports.
Is it Bill Russell?
Yes, it is. It is Bill Russell. Absolutely Bill Russell. He was, of course, I think won like 11 or so NBA titles. He won 2 national titles at the University of San Francisco. He became a player coach. And Red Auerbach is, of course, the coach who was with the Celtics back when they had Havlicek and many others. It is Bill Russell. There you go. Go ahead, Craig.
While the 8th championship win on April 28th marked the end of an era for Coach Red Auerbach and began a historic chapter for Bill Russell, though his first year as player coach saw the team's title streak finally snapped. Russell successfully led the franchise to 2 more championships in 1968 and 1969 before retiring from the hardwood. And yeah, he ended up with 11. And I just thank God every day that we did not have to stomach Bill Simmons during that run by the Celtics in the 50s and 60s, because I can only imagine how intolerable that would be for non-Celtics fans. If we've already seen them win multiple titles over the years, but on a run like that, can you even imagine, for those of you who watch Bill Simmons, what he would have been like?
I don't even know where to
oh
find
my
it.
God.
Is he on YouTube or what?
I mean, he's got his own whole network, but yeah, I don't know. I think he's one of those that's transferred over to Netflix, because now Netflix is scooping up all the most popular podcasts. And I got to tell you, like, I'm not there's one podcast I listen to that's like a true crime podcast, and I've listened to it religiously for like years and years now. And they had a change in host that kind of dented my fandom of it to begin with. I just liked the old version better, but I was still hanging around and listening to it. And then they made the move to Netflix, and now all their stuff is over there. And yeah, I mean, I have Netflix, but I just don't care to watch it on Netflix. Like, I want to listen to it via Spotify or Apple and watch it on YouTube if I want to watch it. But yeah, he's got the dude's a genius. He's a media icon. He's a media Hall of Famer. He's very entertaining at times to listen to. Other times, like anybody else, they have they're good, they're bad. But boy, oh boy, is he obnoxious when it comes to the Celtics. So had he been around,
You mean like Greenberg with anything New York, or they wear their jerseys and stuff? I don't even want to mention Greenberg.
The Bill Simmons doesn't, I don't pay attention to Greenberg, but Bill Simmons, definitely doesn't hide the fact he's a Celtics fan. No, but he just from 57 to 69, winning 11 titles. I wish we could have a time machine and podcast existed just to hear what that would have been like.
Yeah, Philadelphia, of course, had Wilt Chamberlain that ended up winning it, beating the Warriors, who had a great team too with Rick Barry and others, but the Sixers with Chamberlain won the title. Now to the poll results from you, our listeners, viewers, and also here we go. Will Brendan Sorsby play this upcoming college football season? 62% no, 28% after a suspension, so that's 90%, and 10% said yes, he returns for week 1.
Right now, I would vote no. NCAA rules him out based on the information at hand. There is part of me, though, that's wondering if they find an avenue, whether it's mental health or the fact he checked himself into treatment. Although, again, it'd be one thing if you had said that he had done that like a week ago and then this story came out, or a month ago, like he addressed it before there was the big story dropping. That's what makes it a little harder to believe, obviously. So that's why every time I mention it, I say, well, if he does have a problem, I hope he is getting it dealt with while he has this time to do so. But yeah, I think as of right now, based on precedent, that the NCAA rules him out since he bet on Indiana while he was there. And I think there's still part of me that feels like maybe there's a suspension for a certain amount of games. I don't know, just because I can't just definitively say there's no chance he doesn't play next year.
Right.
But I definitely don't think he's back for week 1. No, absolutely not. I think he's serving a suspension at least, at minimum of a few games, and then we'd go from there. But if I had to stake my next paycheck on it, give me the NCAA rules him out.
All right. I picked the 62% no. He will be ruled out, but would not be surprised anymore. All right, let's go to the last one. Thanks to Andrew Valade for these. Which brand makes the best pickup truck? Mine, I said, was Ram.
Do we have a truck sponsor? Let's ask that question.
Yeah, Alan
first.
Samuels, Dodge Chrysler, Jeep Ram, Fiat,
Dodge
and
are not listed.
Richard Card, GMC Motors. There's another one. Yeah, and Burt Colton Ford. So a lot of these are brands of sponsors we have on this podcast.
So in that case, D, all of the above.
Yeah, there's no D. There'd be E. It would be E.
Or E.
Yeah.
E, all of the above.
Yeah,
Damn it.
it would be E.
Yeah, I've never owned a pickup truck. I've typically driven SUVs, and I had a car there for a little stretch. So I'm not the person to ask about pickup trucks. So, yeah, I just want to say thank you to all of our lovely sponsors. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrew Valade. Appreciate it. Rez, the Michelangelo of what we do every day, and also Garrett Ross that does a great deal as well. Thank you for watching us. We see you tomorrow at 3. Looking forward to it. Tim Brando will join the show tomorrow. We haven't had him on in a while. For Craig Smoak, I'm David Smoak for our great sponsors. This is the Smoke Show, 365 Sports. We'll see you tomorrow.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. Once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide. Affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
Whatever it is you wrangle, whatever seeds you sow, no matter what you nurture or what you choose to grow, at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, we're proud to protect all Texans.
When you play hard, sometimes you fall hard.
Sports injuries require special treatment. At Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, our team of expert doctors provides athletes and active adults with comprehensive sports medicine care, diagnostics. Whether you're in high school, college, or beyond, we'll help you get back on the field. Call on the team physicians for Baylor Athletics. Call Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics.
I pitched in the major leagues for 24 years, and let me tell you, I can feel it in my joints. Shoulders, elbows, and knees. Trust me, pain doesn't retire when you do. I tried everything to get rid of the pain. Nothing worked until QC Kinetics.
Baseball legend Roger Clemens and other patients are getting lasting relief with QC Kinetics regenerative treatments. No surgery.
I trust QC Kinetics. You should too. Let's commit to getting rid of all the pain.
Schedule your free consultation today. QC Kinetics. Better starts here.